The Hunter Coast Premier Hockey League Grand Final champions after beating Gosford with a huge win. The 4-3 victory was enough for North to quickly secure the title. More than a lot of people attended the Broadmeadow Hockey Centre yesterday afternoon to watch the grand final of the Hunter Coast Premier Hockey League. And of course, North Newcastle were the first to score as North led 1-0.
Just to create that turnover and enter that circle, putting it across. Nick Reid unlucky not to get across as the Gosford goalkeeper.
Absolutely. Very modern back structure from North. Like, as Ryan Woolnow steps up into that open area, picking up from Lyles.
Then the Gosford Magpies quickly scored back to level it at 1-1.
Webster takes it, just gets through Sam Lyles there, enters the circle. Terrific work from Kale Webster there, and finds the foot. We've got a Gosford short corner.
Yeah, wonderful change in possession as Gosford just receives the ball and just goes straight through.
Yeah, it's terrific work from Kale Webster there, just to attack through that baseline, through those T-spots that the coaches always talk about.
Absolutely. Drawn up on the
Gosford with Michael Taylor. They seem to be in the opposite formation of how they set up last time, but they did switch last time, so that makes a bit of sense.
Possibly a variation. Let's hope and see what occurs.
I think I'm back in Michael Taylor drag flick here. Henry? Let's see if North's defence is up to the task. Oh. Great injection there from Lee Radcliffe, mistrap, and nice goal from Gosford. Michael Taylor's recovered well and just found the middle of
Very direct to the goal.
Meanwhile, in the second half, Gosford quickly struck back with a 2-1 lead.
Like he hit right glove and went top right. So it seems like he made contact and just skipped up to top right. So very unfortunate.
Oh. And here we are. Walker's just entered the circle through the baseline and earned a short corner for his troubles. The Gosford's lane car seems to be a bit cranky with the call, but Nathan Packham or Booger has, Boog's explained what he's called it for, and they seem to be accepting the decision there.
Yes, absolutely. Very hot.
Before scoring back-to-back to make it 3-1.
Kale Webster. And they're in the circle through Robbie Maguire. And there it is. That's another goal for Gosford. Great finish from Zane Drennan. Great work from Robbie Maguire, Sam Carr and Lane Carr to create those opportunities there.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful connection down the field.
But it was not over. But it was not over yet for Norths, who ended up fighting back.
Just in the circle, finds Nick Hill, but Lloyd Radcliffe again, that unsung hero I spoke about earlier, just makes the save in front of the net and stops North getting that shot on goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sam Lyles might be challenging the press here.
As Norths fought back.
North's just trying to get that one touch into the circle and then hope their scramble wins, but Gosford equal up to the challenge just to scramble for that ball that little bit harder. Again, Sam Carr just putting the legs in up front, do that hard work. Nice skill from Chris Coombs there just to get the ball back out to Seth Roach.
Norths then later scored.
And Carr are back on the pitch now. Back 11 on 11. Let's see what can happen in this next 4.5 minutes. Norths need to score at least 2 to get this into extra time.
Riding, holding, just able to pass through the Gosford sticks and is rewarded a long corner.
I think he'll over the ball here.
Might be able to find Seth Roach.
And, Booger just asking it to be retaken. Just make sure it's in the right spot and allowing both teams to reset. Seth finds
It certainly was.
Driving that circle. Good peel into Sam Lyles, and he wins the short corner for North there. Michael Taylor just overcommitting a tiny bit, but getting it on. He's going to have a go, or you reckon?
And of course, Norths knew exactly what to do. They had to have a go.
I don't know whether Walker will give it up. hoping he does.
but there was no
prove
way
he's such a threat. But let's
that
see
he
what
could give it
happens
up.
here As Gosford just get reset. And let's see what happens. Goes to Bruton. And it just come off the leg of the first runner there. Good save by Reed, though, on the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just with that deflection, you never know where it's really going to go.
Holding his presence. Once again, Norse attempting to waste no more time, setting up very early.
Yeah. I think we've got Bruton again. And it's another terrific rundown from the Gosford of running. But just lovely lines they're running to get that touch on the ball. And into Bruton.
And of course, this time, North scored.
And he finds top button on that back post. That's a terrific goal, terrific team.
Norths were now on 2 points.
Now we've got 2.5 minutes of intensity as Norths need one more to send it to extra time.
Absolutely. We'll be seeing a very high pressure.
And they certainly did.
As Roy Walker leading the pack.
Walker sprinting up to put pressure on the back line. Bruton going out to put pressure on Michael Taylor there, who wins the free hit for Bruton's physical touches there. Yeah, physical presence as he's bumped him off the ball. Gosford still calm, still composed in the back here. Just a little bobble from Radcliffe.
Gosford were unsettling. Thankfully, North scored back-to-back.
And he's just beaten Alexander, and Stu Fletcher throws it straight over the back line. So that's a short corner for North here.
And a beautiful change in momentum from North.
Radcliffe looks very cranky with himself for that missed pass.
Absolutely. He's had a faultless game, and now it's
his first fault's come in the wrong time here for Radcliffe.
Absolutely.
Booger seems to have called time off there. I believe it might be for Gosford taking too long to get ready, but they're in the goal now, and let's see what happens here.
And of course, Norths had to score.
And that's a goal.
And it's Josh Bruton with a terrific drag flick to the bottom right-hand side. Radcliffe got a touch, but couldn't quite keep it out. Just out of reach of the goalkeeper, Nick Reed, and we're at 3-3 with 1 minute to go. Let's see what happens.
Cracking grand final as we see a 3-all.
Sanders stepped up, 1:20 to get back into this game by scoring here.
Then, Norths ended up scoring the match winner.
I think Gosford will be pushing hard here.
Absolutely, it'd be a full 7-man press, as we can see.
Just back on that goal, I think Michael Taylor was the one that got the last touch from Gosford. Just unlucky to tap it past Reedy. Just couldn't quite control the ball. But North's here, go to Walker, and he's just going to use his pace to try and get around Alexander. Alexander staying with him, and Walker just gets done for the body shield there.
And it seems like he's getting a green card with 44. Oh, possibly not.
And Booger's called time just to stop it. They need to be flicking. That's the switch gone there. 40 seconds to go through Stewie Fletcher. Just getting into that attack 25 for Gosford. Good truck from Sam Lyles. Just clears it out. Lane cut. And we've got a short corner here. I believe that's come from Booger at the other end. I believe what I'm seeing from Scott New that he's signalling it's come off someone's foot here.
And here we go.
Again, last play of the game to decide the game. Can Gosford put this goal in and send us to a shootout?
Absolutely. This is a mandatory goal with the final seconds depleting. 3, 2, and 1.
And can North keep it out and win their first Premier League premiership since 2016? I'm shaking, Henry. I'm shaking. Here we are. Michael Taylor over the battery again for Gosford. Alexander stepped up to push out with Radcliffe not being on. Here we go. Let's see what happens here. And just a missed truck from Carr. And they've called back of the stick. And that's it.
And that is game over.
As Norths won their first Hunter Coast Premier Hockey League Grand Final for the first time in a decade. And that, of course, since 2016.
Running over there. I don't think he ran that quick in his game earlier. But congratulations to North. I think we should say congratulations also to Gosford on an absolute amazing season.
Nelson Bay are the AFL Hunter Central Coast. men's plate grand final champions after beating Newcastle City right up at Bateau Bay on the Central Coast. It was huge for Nelson Bay, who were just too strong for their rivals right throughout the game. It was a grand final of the AFL Hunter Central Coast men's competition between Nelson Bay and Newcastle City.
Tap out Grant. Interesting to see who gets the best of first medal. There'll be a few people up for it. The guy just had touched all their birds in there. I'll tell you who else might be in there is often. He's been unbelievable across our back. Billy Barton, although he may not come into contention because he got pinged and got a yellow card, Billy. And I've never seen Billy Barton get a yellow card. All the games I've called, I reckon I've called about 30 or 40 for Billy.
Of course, because of that, Nelson Bay managed to kick a lot of goals.
Often's going to come into the play here if he goes long. He's got to go long here. Often's sitting there lurking. Straight down Often's throat. Gets a touch to it. Can. Oh, lovely white foot step. Got to kick it that direction. Ball goes forward. Marking contest. And that'll be it. Grant. I reckon that's Wade Blackburn.
That all stems from 2v1 Nelson Bay. And that's what's happened all day. They've got numbers of the contest that supported Newcastle City had possession of the ball, kicking to a 1-on-2.
He's got to kick this inside out here, Blackburn. He's got to kick this to the left centre. That breeze is quite strong. It's a short kick, but he's got to kick it left side.
Of course, it was huge for Nelson Bay, who was just too good for Newcastle City right throughout the game.
From Wednesday night. Can he finish it? Yes, he can. Interesting kick, but it was effective. He kicked it left centre. Nelson Bay at home, 8-15-63. Newcastle City 5-7-37. It's been a very impressive second half defensively, hasn't it? And the advantage of playing in front of
But also, it was marvellous for Nelson Bay. And of course, it was just too strong.
Yes. Why not? If there's no rule making saying that they've got to have a second men's side, which I don't believe exists at the moment, yes, I think there is a case for them to be promoted. As long as they can keep this squad of players together, yes. I think so. I thought football was in trouble in Nelson Bay, but they've done very well. Grant, another one, Blackburn getting in front.
Nelson Bay had everything that they could, and they certainly did just that.
Oh, well, out of 8-15. If you kick 5 out of 8-15, yeah, you have.
It was the first time that Nelson Bay had won a grand final in the AFL Hunter Central Coast Black Diamond Plate men's competition.
Blackbird's got to kick this outside the left goal post. Tough kick. Kicked it well. Oh, goodness gracious me. That is such a good kick, Wade Blackburn. That's his 6th. 6 out of 9 in a GF. Thank you, mother, for the rabbits. It's all over. Nelson Bay will be premiers. Nelson Bay 9.
Because of that, Nelson Bay crowned the 2022 AFL Hunter Central Coast Black Diamond Plate men's competition premiers. It was a good week of local soccer, and of course it was in a marvellous week for finals of the Hunters NPL competition, and also a grand final of the Northern League 1. The second week of the Hunters NPL competition finals were getting underway, and of course it was in the men's competition as New Lambton took on Newcastle Olympic in a elimination semi-final. Lambton scored 1-0.
And it's Ben Hay once again for the Jaffers.
So far, but it's Lambton.
The Jaffers were in the lead 1-0.
Played a little bit better football, but I think here Lambton's got some experienced players. I know it's only early in the second half, but they'll start to pick it up.
And we were touched. Be called a glance. Bradbury, Bronto, Wobber Knights. The changes for Lambton from that.
loose. Oh, that's a calamity. Oh, hang on. Logue has come out, and looks like there is going to be a brief discussion.
Meanwhile, the first week of the Hunters MPLW finals have also started, and of course Warners Bay took on Broadmeadow Magic.
So 1-0, Lauren Allen breaks the deadline.
But also, the deadlock had to be broken as Warners Bay scored their first goal.
Looking sprightly is Allen. Oh no! Oh, that's a calamity. It's an own goal. And
Then,
it's Lauren Allen who's created it again, this time inadvertently. It looked like it came off the foot of Fantoni. Well, that's a disaster.
it certainly was.
42 minutes gone, and we have a second goal.
Because of that, Warners Bay led 2-0.
Threatening anyone or anything. Straight into the side.
But then later, it started in the second half.
Intensity, just immediately delivering the ball. Gosling attacking.
As Broadmeadow received a yellow card.
As judged to be a very cynical foul.
That, of course, was for a foul.
Very cynical, perhaps overselling it. Maybe just cynical. Gag.
Then Warners Bay had to do one of their best things.
Davis calling for the run of
And of course, Cassidy Davis had to quickly kick the ball.
And it's to Davis. Davis is in a bit of space. She goes for a run, finds Andrews. Andrews. Well, like a wave, she breaks upon the rocks of this Magic defense.
The Magic were trying to do everything they could, but it was not enough.
Goes onto the left, and that looked clumsy. It looked very clumsy.
But however, Warners Bay had a player down due to injury.
Didn't look intentional, but definitely.
But of course, Davis was down due to injury. Then Warners Bay had a yellow card.
Definitely a foul.
It was for a professional foul.
Game, Magic, they need to put this home here. They need to bring this back to a 1-goal second change of the match.
And of course, Broadmeadow had to quickly change players.
Her shift is done, and Geordie Evans, who comes onto the field to replace her. Is Evans the spark that Magic have been searching for all night?
And because of it...
Monroe, again aggressive. So aggressive is Alice Monroe. It's hard to really play against that when she's so willing to attack the ball. A little bit too crafty, but Jerem's going to find it. And then Gosling. Gosling goes to ground. It looks clumsy. There's nothing.
And because of that, there was nothing that the Magic could either do.
Clashes with Jerem. Yeah, there's going to be cards handed out as Cook receives one for her trouble.
Cook received a yellow card as well.
Seems that the assistant on the far side
as the Magic received another card.
Well, Cook received an immediate yellow card. I don't know. It just seemed very clumsy. There's no penalty. Going to step up. Oh, this is to bring it to 1 goal. The difference.
Then
Dobson, she needs to put this home. Magic need this right now. A huge moment.
Suddenly,
the run of Jerem created it. Dobson puts
Broadmeadow struck back.
The experience of Riley Dobson brings it back.
2-1.
And it's 2-1 now. Jerem too much to handle in the box. Skipped past Gosling and drew the foul. So
then Warners Bay scored their third goal.
Hasn't dealt with it. Konchowski's found it. Has she fired them into the grand final? Has Konchowski found the winner?
Andrews rose. She didn't get a piece of it. It threw off Alison Logue, and then Konjaski pounced. The poacher. Oh, 3-1.
Then 4 goals for Warners Bay
Out swinging to the back post. It comes back to Allen.
means
Oh, Allen!
4 out of 4.
Allen! It's 2 for Lauren Allen today, and now it's really coming unraveled. Oh, Magic, they're now down 4-1. And I think Lauren Allen has just grabbed the pen from the drawer to write those names in pen. I think they're on their way to the finals. What? There wasn't enough advantage. So,
And of course,
Konjaski to
Warners
deliver,
Bay were knocked
and
down. And of course, they had to do
So she just put this in
everything
the
that
box.
they can.
she
And they
does towards the
certainly
head of
did
Andrews.
just
It's
that.
so dangerous. Oh, that is a strong challenge. Yeah, there's going to be a card by
But
the
of
looks of it.
course,
Oh, that is a second yellow. She's gone. She's headed for the showers early. And now,
Broadmeadow
just like
had both a
Asper's,
yellow and a
Magic
red
are down to
card.
10. Well, isn't that a turn of advance? Carlisle is sent from the play for a second yellow. And I think, crucially, she's going to miss next week. Oh, Konjaski just sends it. And Konjaski, oh, it's nearly gone in. Andrews is going to fall.
Thankfully,
Andrews,
that
the
didn't
one
stop
in
Warners Bay
beyond
though.
That's 5-1. Warners Bay are heading to the grand final. Magic are going to have to play next week. Oh, I cannot believe it.
5-1.
The wheels
It was
are
just
well and truly come
marvellous
off the
for
cart
Warners
for
Bay.
Magic. 5-1 and to the overlapping run of
Then
Allen.
it
Who has a
turned
look
to
on the
6-1.
inside. Allen delivers to Andrews. Oh, it's come off the crossbar. No, it's in. Andrews. She scores a brace, and now they're
The
just
final
rubbing
score,
salt in the
Warners
wound.
Bay 6,
Oh,
Broadmeadow
6-1.
1.
It's out of control. Magic are looking shell-shocked. They don't know what's hit them in the second half. And Tara Andrews. It's a question of
Meanwhile, in the other one, Newcastle Olympic were just too good for Charlestown Azuri, 3-2. And of course, Charlestown scored the first goal. Then Newcastle Olympic had to do everything that they could. And of course, Olympic scored a goal. Then it all came up to Newcastle to quickly have it on the good side. As Charlestown scored another. Good news for Newcastle Olympic. It was just, of course, one of their players who scored a goal. And of course, Newcastle Olympic drew 2-2. Then Newcastle did, of course, the damage, eliminating Charlestown from the rest of the final series. and beating them 3-2. Meanwhile, Belmont Swansea has defeated Nearhampton in the Northern League One first grade grand final. And of course, Nearhampton were the first to score.
Comes up, takes out Kai Fawkes, and then he scores straight past Alice Bobskanovsky. Kane Walston, he has put the underdog.
But not quite. And of course, Belmont Swansea scored first.
That's a lovely finish there from Wilson. Through Wilson.
Sullivan. Out to the right to Fletcher Davis. Eyes up, goes out wide to Lattimore. It's past one. It's past two. Plays a ball into Colwell. Is good.
Then Nearhampton levelled the scores at 1-1.
Joel Colwell has equalised for Newhampton for a brilliant play across the right-hand side from Lattimore, getting past two and finding the open man, Tom.
And that's absolutely.
Before Belmont Swansea secured the match winner,
And it's in, plays the ball from 45.
becoming the Northern League One grand final champions, defeating Nearhampton 2-1.
That's a wonderful free kick there from Clayton Poole. Spotted Bosnowski off his line, floated one in.
In just a moment, we'll have more local sports news, and also we'll have flashbacks of local sports news from 1993.
We want to see your dreams come true. And the reason that we're here today is just because of you. This is our town. It's here that we're born and bred. We've been through the rough times, been through the tough times, know about the good times ahead. We know how to do it your way. Build it up in your own hometown. Make it grow with the people you know. People who won't let you down. And we wanna go with you. Wanna keep it growing, wanna keep it going, and we know where you're going to. This is our town. It's here that we're born and bred. Wanna see it growing, wanna see it going, wanna keep you moving ahead. This is our town. It belongs to you and me. And the Newcastle Permanent is our society. Hey, this is our town. Hey, this is our town. Our town. Our town.
Wake up in the morning, gotta get my paper, 'cause the Herald is the best way to start your day.
Hunter Rugby Union, and the Hamilton Hawks will take on Mayweather Carlton in next Saturday's grand final after beating the Wanderers with a 59-24 win. It was huge for Hamilton, who were just too good for their rivals right throughout the game. Meanwhile, Hamilton had to fight back after Mayweather secured a 28-26 win last week. Hamilton will now face Mayweather Carlton next week. To the NSW, and of course, and the Maitland Pickers, who are of course this year's Newcastle Rugby League Grand Final premiers, were too strong for the Forbes Magpies with a huge victory. It was massive for Maitland, with the Pickers too good for their rivals right throughout the game.
And Maitland have first points. This is an attacking chance for Maitland. They will go straight through here.
And of course, Maitland scored right throughout the entire game.
And Maitland are enjoying their visit to the country here.
And they certainly were.
And they love this inside ball. This time Butterfield in space. Big front rower.
Gents Butterfield scored a try.
Butterfield was too strong. They work with Langbridge. Swung across to Anderson. Anderson through. Needs to get it away. Goes to the line. Hoiks it across to Bradley.
Van Bradley scored a try.
Maitland might just try something here in the final seconds. Lamb will dink it. Chance here for Bradley. Bradley's caught it. He's streaking away. He finds Anderson. They did try something on the break, and it came up. The Pickers.
But of course, Maitland were too strong for their rivals, taking them down with a huge victory in the President's Cup semi-final.
Pickers have struck within a minute of the second half. That is the 20. Green Hull. Short ball is good, and there's a chance here for Forbes. They have broken through. It's Merritt's try. Lamb on last tackle. Swung it out to Langbridge. Langbridge under pressure.
And of course, Maitland scored. And of course, Maitland scored in the final few minutes.
Last tackle.
Then straight in the second half.
Got a touch. Sopalala got the pick up. And after everything else, Maitland get a bit of luck as well. Or so it looked. On they come with O'Donnell. Now, Fighter-Tour, Natalia.
Before winning the match 50 points to 6. Then 52 to 6. Good news for the Newcastle Knights. They'll take on the Penrith Panthers in next Saturday's Jersey Flag Cup Grand Final, after the Panthers beat the Sydney Roosters 27-22 in the preliminary decider. It was just massive for it was massive for Penrith, who were just too strong for their rivals. Even though the Roosters tried everything they could, but it was just all too late.
As the goal was successful, it's 27-12. Numbers here. Fakatamafi can't pick it up. Carroll and Lebu kicked it through. There's a chase.
The Roosters tried everything that they could, but time ran out.
The siren will go. This is the last play. Knight, good pass across. And somebody scores.
The Knights will play against the Panthers next Saturday.
The Panthers are into the grand final. We'll play Newcastle at Combank next Sunday afternoon.
And of course, the Knights hoping to become the favourites to win next weekend's grand final. To Central Coast Rugby Union and the Razorbacks. The Razorbacks are through to the grand final after defeating Avoca Beach by 8 points. The preliminary final going down to the wire at Royal Wheat Oval, promising a thrilling decider next weekend.
Facing off twice already during 2022, Avoca walked away winner both times. Less than 3 minutes in, with the grand final spot on the line, the Sharks already looked likely to go 3 for 3.
He's celebrating too early, Mitchell. Put the ball down. He does so.
Hope came through Orimba's Eden Cerrone, running the ball wide, burning 4 opposition players. Stopped in his tracks by Sean Townsend, but momentum had shifted. Soon after, the men found themselves locked in a tight maul. After 30 seconds of struggling, the Razorbacks were finally on the board.
Well worked try. Razorbacks back in the match.
One more from Mitch McGrath, and the Sharks had a handy lead at half-time. Coming out of the main break, it was Orimba looking dangerous.
Beats one, beats two. Gets in behind it. Options in behind. Joey beat you. Great tackle.
Pedden stopped short, but only temporarily. The Razorbacks managing to slip past defences. The lead swapping back and forth 2 more times, as both sides were desperate to stay in it. With the timer running on fumes, there was just 1 point between them. The next try would win it. Orimba's Joseph Abiyu took on the responsibility.
Scores next to the uprights.
Getting his side over the line in more ways than one, sealing the win 32 points to 24. Everything leading to Saturday's grand final, the Razorbacks earning a spot against Terrigal at Central Coast Stadium. Will DeFulvio, NBN News.
Yeah, very loud up there. Coffs United have been crowned the Coastal Premier League premiers in the comp's first ever grand final. After 3 years of competition, supporters were finally given a thrilling decider, with Southern United going down 1-0.
A decider with 40 scoreless minutes. Lions keeper Jake Marnie smothered this attempt. Another attack thwarted by Blake Townsend. The Lions getting close with a low cross by Tassine Edo. And then, just 2 minutes before half-time, a free kick parried down by Southern United's keeper, Rhys Dawes, ended up with a neat finish by Townsend. Coffs United on 1-0. Into the second half, a powerful strike by Hampson slammed back off the post. Minutes later, Southern had their best chance to equalise with a header by Blair Smith sailing over the bar. Coffs United looked to extend their lead, but wrapped up CPL premiers 1-0.
And our guys are really disappointed. We really came with the belief that we could win this. You know, we made a bit of history tonight, which is huge in our club's, you know, long history. As boys are, they're so excited that you know, they've made some history tonight.
Alison Paul, NBN News.
Yeah, just massive. Now let's go back to flashbacks of local sports stories from 1993. And of course, it was that time when local sporting teams had won grand finals. And of course, there was one team that we had forgotten in the reserve grade. And of course, it was the Newcastle Knights reserve grade, winning a minor semi-final to go through to the grand final.
Curry played an impressive win against Central last week, and they were determined to make it 2 in a row. The Bulldogs were tackling their hearts out when Darryl Johnson put his head right in the line of his teammate's shoulder. He was out for a while, but later continued. Both teams put each other under pressure, and it later turned into punches right on the Curry try line. Referee Lovett oblivious to the stoush. Brian Quinton scored a brilliant solo try. The Bulldogs were the first to settle back down and were easy winners, 36-16. In rugby, Maitland were at home to Hamilton. As the drizzle settled in, the game became a bruising, punishing encounter. Maitland halfback Jeff Cook tried some impressive moves, but despite his speedy play, he couldn't keep Hamilton scoreless. The final score, Maitland 15, Hamilton 12. The Wanderers thought it would be just another win, and they immediately set about putting their stamp on the game. But But the Gosford Red Devils weren't going to let them have it all their own way and realised that if they kept carrying on the back foot, they would make their own errors. The pressure paid off because in the first 10 minutes, halfback Warwick Ward grabbed an intercept and charged to the line unopposed. The Devils could sense a win and threw everything into defence. Every time the carry-on forwards touched the ball, they were out-muscled. The Wanderers were looking down the barrel of their first loss in 4 years and 3 consecutive premierships. Gosford won 17-3, the remainder of their points coming from the boot of Scott Salters. Carryong officials said they were disappointed to lose, but acknowledged that it had to happen one day. Everett Stevens went to Perth determined to inspire the side not to come home 2 down. Perth's Ricky Grace wanted to make sure they didn't get too confident. By the end of the first quarter, the Falcons were up by 10 points. They doubled that by half-time. Centre Paul Kuiper managed to get his feet off the ground and lifted the whole side. The win was a complete upset and now puts the Falcons in second place on the ladder. This Saturday, they will have match of the round at home when they meet competition leaders Illawarra. Unbeaten after 3 rounds of the competition, Gyra overcame some early opposition from the determined YCW side to run out winners 42-10. Despite some impressive play, YCW's fight for victory wasn't helped by an untimely leg injury to their informed second rower Glenn Smith in the second half. Gyra's attack proved to be just too strong for the Blues team, with Daly, Kleindienst, Connors, Waters, Walls and Moran all scoring tries. Jack Kleindienst's boot helped boost the Gyra total, thumping over 7 goals. In other games in Group 19, Inverell Hawks beat Glen Innes, Moree thrashed Uralla, and Armidale and the Boomerangs drew at 22-all. In Group 4, West Tamworth overcame City, Gunnedah beat North Tamworth, Weewar just sneaked in over Narrabri, and Werris Creek had the bye. Rodney Howe and Adam Muir, the new men of steel in the Knights camp. The pair are best of mates and, according to coach David Waite, best suited to continue the Knights' hard work in the forwards. Against Illawarra, they slipped into the game plan without a hitch when injuries forced Harrigan and Sargent to leave early.
3 grades play pretty much the same, similar sort of football, so yeah, it wasn't too bad. You need a helping hand here and there.
The chance to play first grade so early in their careers doesn't come along every day, and they realise the opportunity they've been given.
Every young fella's dream is to stay in first grade, and hopefully I can try and secure a spot there.
The honour of being named in the team's starting lineup hasn't been lost on their families either.
My grandma's been ringing up all the time and giving me her best wishes, so it's been really good, yeah.
The team left Marathon Stadium a few hours ago and will stay in Sydney overnight to make sure they only have a short trip over to Cogra tomorrow afternoon. After being kept scoreless last week for the first time in his NBL career, Al Green made sure it wasn't going to happen again. The entertainment centre was packed and the crowd's enthusiasm rubbed off on Everett Stevens. Peter Harvey must have felt like Moses when the defence just opened up before him. Terry Dozier was in brilliant form, snapping in baskets from all over the court, but Harvey was in everything. At one point he fell heavily with Matt Flynn and seconds later played an important role in setting up a Dozier slam dunk. Not long after, Illawarra's Melvin Thomas ended up exactly the way his team was playing. He limped off with a suspected back injury. Not even the Hawks' star shooters could turn the tide. Spurred on by the crowd, the Falcons ran away with the game to finish up 100-75. The change in time will actually work in the Falcons' favour. The extra hours will give Al Green a little bit more time for his nose to toughen up. Last week he played with strapping after suffering a nasty break, and he's the first to admit it did slow him down.
The first mask I had on, I couldn't see over the top of my forehead, so that bothered my shooting underneath the basket, and couldn't see the ball handling. So this week I'm going to try without it. Just pray that I don't get hit in it again.
So without the mask this week, there'll be no jibes of being tagged Hannibal Lecter, though Green wouldn't mind chewing up the opposition. Speaking of new nicknames, and the lanky Terry Dozier is rapidly becoming known as the Flyer. Each week his slam dunk credits are increasing.
I think it has a lot to do with the aggressive play that we've brought to the team now, and then you got to have the athletes able to do it. And one thing that Everett's proven time and time again after winning the slam dunk contest that he's a quality dunker, and with me being 6'9", I better know how to dunk.
Paul Kuiper's injured knee is well on the mend, and Simon O'Donnell is rapidly gaining confidence after last year's foot injury. Coach Tom Wisman believes the game against Magic will be more psychological than physical.
It's the only team that we haven't beaten of the top 5 teams last year, so we're looking to get a win up, and certainly it'll be a big win for us if we do.
The game gets underway at midday on Sunday at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre. Brunker has been struggling all week with the knee he injured in the second State of Origin game. X-rays reveal he cracked the kneecap, and although he can run in a straight line, he's finding difficulty changing direction at speed. While Brunker has been working to be fit, Knights prop Paul Harrigan has been taking it easy. He has to play against Parramatta on Sunday, then back up on Monday night with the state side. However, he is adamant he won't be holding back in the club game. However, he might not play as big a role as he did last time in the deciding game with the Blues.
If I start, I'll be just probably fairly similar to the first game, I'd say, where I'll probably go for 20 minutes and he'll take me off. He uses the interchange really well, and I think he'll do it again.
But whether Harrigan will be putting on the Knights' armour again next year is still up in the air. Some big-name Sydney clubs have made no secret of their desire to sign him up.
Anyone who has approached me, I've just been telling them the same thing, that roughly after the representative sequence is over, we'll start negotiations then, but until then there's been nothing. I haven't spoken to anyone.
The Central Coast Zone final was played at the Sydney Football Stadium as a curtain raiser to tonight's South's Canterbury game, and the Terrigal side warmed to the occasion first, scoring a try in the opening minutes. Henry Kendall responded with some skilled play, Aaron West slipping away vital passes. Henry Kendall looked to then snatch control of the game, but the Seaside boys responded with a barrage of tries. The final score, Terrigal 26, Henry Kendall 18. The game can be seen in full on NBN tomorrow morning at 6:30. In the closing minutes of the game, South East Melbourne were well clear. However, Peter Harvey continued to pressure the opposition. He slipped a pass away and was trying to set up a screen for Michael Johnson when he was struck.
Well, I remember passing the ball, and then after that I was just seeing stars for I didn't know what happened.
The referee let the game roll on. Harvey finally had to be subbed off. He sustained muscular damage to his neck and arm, along with some internal bruising around his collarbone. Physiotherapist Lee Jensen is working hard to have him back on the court by the weekend. Late yesterday, Falcons management referred the incident to the tribunal, and they wasted no time advising Curl that he had to appear.
It's a physical game, but when you intentionally get hit, he was obviously going to hit me with his elbow. There's no two ways about it, but I'm happy that action's been taken up.
It will be Curl's third appearance in as many years, and if found guilty, he faces a lengthy suspension. The team was named around midday, but Adrian Brunker didn't know he'd been picked until he turned up for training just over an hour ago.
I was just over doing my weights, and Mark Sargent came up to me and said, "You're in the side," and I thought he'd shake my hand for some other reason, but he said, "You're in the state side," and I just about dropped the weight on my head.
Brunker has been working hard on his kicking after some hot and cold performances early this season, but the Queensland selectors obviously have faith in him because they've penciled him in as kicker.
When I took over the role from John Schuster's, it gave me an extra link to try and get into the Queensland side, and if I'm going to be used as a kicker, I'll be very happy.
Brunker will go into camp with the rest of the Queensland side on Wednesday.
Motocross is alive and kicking on the North Coast. Former Supercross champ Coffs Harbour's Glenn Poole was a standout in the 250 class in A and B grade. But it wasn't just the big guys stealing the show. In the 8 to 12 year age group, Kobe Woodison was impressive on his 60cc bike. Christian Horwood won the C grade 125 class. Riders looking for points leading up to grand final time in October. This is the tournament the high flyers are after. Bowlers from Burleigh Heads in the north and Sydney in the south shooting for the cash. Quality bowlers like Port Macquarie's Keith Caddy hoping to make the cut-off for the top 20 in the Skins final in August. The series has been running along the north coast, a winner from each area in line for the money. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The competition attracted 50 contestants from across Australia, eager for the $2,000 in prize money and the match experience for the coming state championships. Coffs Harbour RSL was the venue for the snooker hotshots, and the action warmed up today after preliminary rounds yesterday. One of the standouts was 18-year-old Scott Smith of Brisbane, who shot the highest break of the tournament with 65. Scott and his mate Adrian Ashford will leave for England soon to have a crack at the professional circuit. Wayne Gibb was the highest placed competitor from the Coffs Harbour locals. For 2 days they've been slogging it out in a round-robin competition. The championships are for under-19s. However, Newcastle's Rob Powell is only 14 years old and has been one of the form pitchers. Late Macquarie's Rebecca Farron was another to stand out. It shouldn't have been a surprise though, because Rebecca is part of the Australian development team. Occasionally the softball was interrupted by rain, but at Raymond Terrace the wind was more of a problem. It chopped up the Williams River, making it hard for competitors in the national barefoot titles. In some heats, no one was even able to finish. And at Catherine Hill Bay, the stiff southerly made for atrocious conditions in the Hunter surfing titles. It seemed like an omen for the night. Everett Stevens caught for an uncharacteristic travel in the first few minutes. It was probably the most physical game the Falcons have played all year. Grant Kruger was belted from pillar to post. No matter how many times he was bowled over, he always came back, putting his body on the line. However, while the big boys were slogging it out, Peter Harvey was keeping the side in touch. Mike Mitchell may have been the bad guy as far as the Falcons were concerned, but the Gold Coast crowd lifted him to basket after basket. And with seconds to go, he wrapped up the game. Without a doubt, Craig Peavy and Justin Rousel's fight stole the night. The two really worked each other over until they drew blood. And with claret streaming from his own cuts, Peavy threw a headbutt that didn't miss Rousel's eye.
My trainer said just before the 5th round, he said, "That's it, Craig's going to stop the fight." And I knew it was going to be over. The same reason I attacked him in the last round, and it only would have been a matter of time before they stopped the fight.
And stop it they did, the referee instantly disqualifying Peavy. The Newcastle boy refused to leave the ring, claiming the decision was unjust.
He was headbutting me during the whole fight, and if I did headbutt him in that last round, maybe he deserved it.
Peavy believes Rousel's camp had planned all along to...
Dirty fighter. He knew the only way he could fight me was upset me and stick his face in my face and just annoy me, and he done it.
Rousel says he's shocked at Peavy's claims.
I've never done anything dirty in my career, and Craig Peavy was shortening stride, and I think he was looking for a way out, and that was his way out. He done with his head what he didn't have the heart or the ability to do with his hands, and I'm looking forward to going back to Newcastle in 6 weeks and turning Craig Peavy inside out, so I hope he's watching this.
It's a sport that's been developed from the streets, hockey on rollerblades. At first glance, it looks like ice hockey. Players use long sticks and wear plenty of body padding. And although it's not supposed to be a body contact sport, you can see why they need the protective gear. And with the hard knocks comes the occasional frayed temper.
They like a bit of the biff, but it's the referee's trying to cut down on it. But
Hornets in the white uniforms are one of the latest teams to join the State League, but are by far the most improved. They consistently whip the Sydney teams and have been equal leaders of the competition. The sport is growing every day and attracting kids who are sick of just rollerblading backwards and forwards.
a couple of years a bit bigger than roller hockey, I'd say, just because with roller hockey you play on skates, and with blade hockey you play on blades, and a lot of kids can play out in the road.
The Hornets play at the Broadmeadows skating rink every Sunday. Last year's runner-up, Julie Swanson, yesterday broke the course record with 74 off the stick at Nelson Bay. Today she was just as keen to set another record and bring home the title to her Raymond Terrace club. Hot on her heels was Toronto's Gail Gannon. The greens of the Newcastle course were today running super fast, creating all sorts of challenges. Cessnock's Dale Linnetson is only 22 years old and already a serious contender for senior titles. Katrina Skinner from East Maitland is also one of the area's young up-and-coming stars. 300 ladies headed to Newcastle for the tournament, some from as far away as Mullumbimby, Tenterfield and Kiama. Tomorrow the ladies will go around again, this time in the Merriweather foursomes. Waratah's Paul Allardyce started the game in dynamic form, making strong inroads into Toronto territory. Not long after, Waratah winger Darren Slocky towed through a drop ball and scored a length of the field try. Scorpions' Mal Graham wasn't going to give in easily and showed the way for his forwards, and they rallied behind their captain. But it just wasn't enough. The Cheetahs finishing up winners 16-4. The win could have been much bigger though if fullback Tony Picken had a better night with the boot. The rest of the round will be completed tomorrow, the teams in the red hosting the home game. The night didn't start well for the Falcons. Grant Kruger missed a goal and the Suns immediately turned it into points. Ricky Jones leapt like a man possessed, slam dunking his side into the lead. Everett Stevens racked up only 17 for the night. Not even lanky Terry Dozier could pull a hat-trick. He was often blocked and it was almost like the Suns had trained all week to turn a rebound into instant points. And with 4 points separating them and 4 minutes to go, the Falcons watched the game slip away through the hands of Jones. Final score, Townsville Suns 98, Falcons 89.
There was nothing in it for the first two quarters. At one stage, Newcastle was a few points behind. Although it still seemed like anybody's game, the Falcons' defensive barrage confined the Cannons to just 11 points in the first quarter, the lowest scoring rate in this year's NBL. Newcastle went to the main break 1 point ahead. Everett Stevens was to score 30 points for the Falcons and opened the lead on Canberra, who seemed continually off the mark. Looking more like Hannibal Lecter after last week's nose job, Mean Al Green lived up to his name. Timeout was called. The Feathers provided a tension breaker as coaches pulled their sides together. The crowd could smell victory after two Falcons road losses. Dozier ran away with the game for a final 97-85 win over Canberra. The development weekend saw everyone from the 12-year-olds to the over 25s and opens in all 40 teams take to the course. Some individuals are seen as the raw recruits destined for state academy competition and possibly beyond. Players in the current North Coast Academy squad were on hand as role models in training yesterday, but mixing it for points today. There'll be a similar camp at Kempsey in early July, then the 3-day NIB games in Newcastle. Old rivalries opened up at Townsend Oval in a physical clash between Lakes and Souths. From early in, it looked like being a hard-fought game, Souths pounding against a defensive wall with little avail. By half-time, the Lions were trailing Lakes 6-8, but it was no easy pickings for the Seagulls either. The strain was showing on battle-weary troops into the second half, and Lakes grew that extra leg to carry them on. Final scoreboard, Lakes 30, Souths 10.
The 17-man squad stretched out around Harker Oval last night, but before everyone got too comfortable, they all underwent a demanding medical from Dr. Janet Hall. There was some concern over Paul Tideman's calf, however everyone was given the all clear. Coach Cole Hutchinson ran his side through a strong workout, making sure all the players became familiar with the set plays. Selectors have picked a tough forward pack and plenty of speed in the backs. And they'll need every edge they can get because the Illawarra team will have a number of former Sydney first graders in their ranks. Although selection in the Newcastle team is valued, it also has its disadvantages. Cessnock's Jamie Forbes and Lake's Paul Tyburn can't play for their club sides on Friday night, but the rest of the team is eligible to play in Sunday's round. The Steel City League match will be played at number 2 Sports Ground on Saturday afternoon at 1:30. Kostya jumped on the scales first and came in right on the required weight. His American counterpart followed soon after and surprised everyone by coming in lighter than Kostya. Both fighters underwent extensive medicals, the doctor paying particular attention to their hands. Newcastle's Craig Peavy and Casino's Justin Rousel will make up part of the undercard, and their bout is being tipped to steal the limelight. Lance Hobson, also from Newcastle, showed he hasn't lost any condition and will prove a tricky challenge for Singapore's Dean Hanif. But not all the fighters easily made their required weight. Newcastle's Paddy Martin was well over, and not even a discreetly placed towel could help him lose it. So it was into the sauna for a quick jog. 3 times he was forced to jump on the scales and head back to the dry heat. Finally, he made it. After the official niceties were over, all the fighters split for their traditional big meal of pasta. Zhu and Rousel went to a restaurant. The Corsair went to the home of his new Australian pal, Lance Hobson. By the time they all get back in the ring tonight, they could have gained more than a kilo. Promoters warned all week that if you blinked during the Kostya fight, you might just miss it. Well, less than a minute in and Larry LaCourcier was on the mat for the first time. No sooner had he stood up, and Kostya did it all again. From there it was only a matter of time, and only 2 minutes 40 seconds into the first round, the lights went out for Larry. The Corsair was out cold for about 40 seconds, but he soon recovered. However, Casino's Justin Rousel and Newcastle's Craig Peavy provided the best stoush of the night. Rousel cut Peavy very heavily in the 4th round. The Newcastle boy came out in the 5th and tried to even the score with a headbutt. The referee immediately ended the fight by disqualifying Peavy, but the drama didn't end there. Peavy refused to leave the ring. While he was arguing with officials, his family, spectators and Jeff Fennick all became involved in a fiery push and shove that had to be broken up by security guards. A rematch is expected within weeks. And Newcastle's Lance Hobson was lucky to come away with a draw from his fight against Singapore's Dean Hanif. The day started with a special stage through the car park of a local sports complex. Although it was tight, they still managed some good speeds. The rally tyres very punishing on the gravel car park. Away from the town, and Wayne Bell showed the style of the new Hyundai Lantra. Today's event is the car's debut, and Hyundai intend to make it their racing flagship. Craig Stellard in car 1 didn't stay in the lead for long. He pulled out after stripping a gearbox. Gosford's Ron Kremen withdrew his car from a race in Malaysia to try and win this event. Local highway patrol officers clocked one car at 180 kilometres an hour in the forest, and nearly all of them sitting on 50 kilometres sideways. But they were all eating the dust of local hero Warren Ridge. Ridge set a cracking pace early on and had the others chasing him. Not everyone, though, could keep up. One team pushed it to the limit, but slipped over that edge. No sooner were they over and officials had them back on their wheels and heading towards the finish line. And it doesn't matter how many times you get behind the wheel, you just never know when it's time to holler for a marshal. Charlestown started with tons of enthusiasm. Jason Edwards found plenty of open spaces, but not enough backup. Charlestown's Paul Carlos gave away a penalty after hitting John Gutherson high. It seemed to rattle the Butcher boys and they couldn't maintain the drive. Over at Harker Oval, Shane Mackley went in just on half-time, but the Rosellas were still down 8-11 at the break. Curry thought they could smell a win in the air and continually pressured West's line. But it wasn't to be. West scored right on the full-time bell to win. Robbie McCormack couldn't stop smiling all the way home from Sydney. He was the late inclusion in the Blues squad and played a major role in his side's win. He says he wasn't quite prepared, though, for the hectic pace.
Yeah, I was struggling. I think it took me about 25-30 minutes to actually settle down, get my second wind and know what I was doing out there. I was pretty happy to give a couple of penalties so we could get a bit of a breather.
Across town, and Paul Harrigan was straight into the chores, hanging out the tools of a champion. However, the hard work did have its rewards. He says wrapping up the series is unforgettable. Harrigan was also high in his praise for his hooker.
I know he's keeping a secret there, everyone knows.
Yeah. After the X-rays today.
Yeah, X-rays today. Never worry about a call, never all of a sudden. I had some ice on my knee for starters because it was in a fair bit of pain. But then I started breaking out in shivers and shaking around and ended up having to go to the doctor's room and get put on a drip. They said I was dehydrated and
It was in the dying moments of the Knights' clash with Cronulla on the weekend. Hagan going in for a ball-and-all tackle on Sharks halfback Mitch Healy.
It was a situation where he actually caught the football in front of his face, and it would appear that I've hit him in the head, but I've actually made contact with the ball.
Hagan says the judiciary dealt with it in a few minutes. His great reputation in the game was preserved, and importantly, no fine or suspension. Meanwhile, the Knights have stepped up their campaign, calling for a fair go from referees. Hagan says all three grades at Newcastle are being penalised twice as much as their opposing teams. Hagan, Coach Waite and Mike Armstrong met with Director of the Refs Mick Stone last night.
We're not conceding that we're being victimised or anything. We just think that there are certain areas that we are obviously infringing on and the opposition are doing similar things and not being picked up for the same.
Hagan says it was a positive meeting for both parties. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Defending champions wearing blue were up against Taormina High School in a repeat of last year's North Coast final. With injury sidelining 7 key players, Taormina was at a disadvantage, although the home side struck first with 2 penalty goals. Maxville levelled soon after, winger Darren Ward taking the penalty tap kick and surprising the retreating Taormina defence. Taormina showed it could move the ball around quickly though, lock forward Jamie Johnson juggling it before setting it down under the posts. Maxville's fast-moving attack started to show on the scoreboard, fullback Scott Kay stepping out to record another first-half try. The visitors continued to widen the margin after the break, this never-say-die effort by lock Reg Donovan contributing to the final 34-20 score. The Commonwealth Bank Cup will now see Maxville High face Lismore's Woodlawn College, the winners of the Northern Rivers final, in the series regional playoff.
The changes start with the backs. Robbie O'Davis has secured the job of fullback, forcing Brad Godden out onto the wing. Captain Michael Hagan moves to centre, and Matthew Johns slots in as 5'8". The new hitmen, Rodney Howe and Adam Muir, are back in the side after a disciplined game last week. Muir in particular made some impressive bursts through the St George defence, and he will now be hard to shake from the side the town has to offer, but a few of them will have trembling knees just before match time, thanks to supermodel Elle McPherson. The game has been moved back to 7:30 to make sure the body can perform the honours of kicking off.
Al Green was taking it easy today, a little sore and sorry after the weekend game against the Gold Coast Rollers. With just minutes to go, he copped an accidental elbow from teammate Kruger, the worst hit he's had in more than 15 years of top-class competition.
I was seeing stars for a few seconds and it was really hurting, and I just asked the coach, did he think it was broke? He said, yes, it is broke.
While he finished the game, he needed surgery to get the face pushed back into shape.
I told the doctor yesterday when he would have a jaw like Michael Jackson, a nose like his. I don't think he caught on to it.
Jokes aside, it's down to the serious business of maintaining the Falcons' unbeaten record at home this season. Green will be fitted with a special protective mask for the game against the Cannons on Saturday night at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre. Canberra is coming off a win, the Falcons 2 away game losses.
But I think at home, it's more the fans, the crowd at home will help us out a little more, bring us home to win.
The under-25 team was out for its final training session last night before Saturday's match, and what better way than to play a game against local A-grade side Beach Hotel. Last year, the first time the Steel City Challenge was held, Newcastle came home victorious, and coach Helen Grogan says this year they intend to repeat the performance. The team, which is actually the Newcastle representative side, is known as a fast-moving attacking team, and that's the strategy they plan to practice on Saturday. It's a tall side, the average height around 175 centimetres or 5'10". This comes in handy in the goal circle, especially with goal shooter Fiona Wilton, who stands at 6 foot. Saturday's game will also give the girls valuable match practice in preparation for the state championships on the June long weekend. Newcastle will play Illawarra at 2:45 on Saturday afternoon at the National Park Courts. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
From the start of the game, Paul Harrigan made it clear he wasn't sore from the game against Parramatta less than 30 hours before. He was in everything and well on the way to snatching man of the match points. 20 minutes in and Martin Bella refused to let him pack into a scrum and tempers flared. Both of them were marched to the sin bin. Harrigan was back on the field for only a minute when he went in for a try, his first in 2 years. The Chief flew back home this afternoon, happy the Blues won the series, but disappointed he was involved in a fight.
Just one of those scrums, you know, where the niggling starts, and I'll just put that one down to experience here.
How do you feel towards Martin Bella now?
Just the same.
The altercation, though, won't affect his selection for the Australian team.
Nothing officially, but I'm fairly confident.
While Harrigan was running around Lang Park, his club captain was struggling to walk. Michael Hagan spent the day having x-rays and physio after he injured his back against Parramatta. The film showed he slipped a disc in his lower back. The only cure, plenty of rest. So far, Hagan has played 99 consecutive games for the Knights, but his milestone 100th could be put on hold.
I certainly won't jeopardise any further damage by playing too soon, and I'll be guided by what Neil thinks and how physio progresses in the next week.
The split round could work in his favour. The Knights don't meet Canterbury for another 2 weeks. It's one of the longest walks Craig Mealer from Waratah Mayfield has ever made into the judiciary room of the Newcastle League. Sunday was only his second game back after he was cited and found guilty of this tackle against West's Tim Perrin early last month. On Sunday, he belted Wayne Harvey, knocking him senseless, while Harvey stared skywards trying to catch a bomb. Mealer and coach Cole Love explained it was just an unfortunate accident and Mealer should be given the benefit of the doubt, but no matter how many times they showed the video, the judiciary wasn't convinced and suspended him for 8 weeks. While Mealer was watching his season disappear in front of him, Dean Crichton from Charlestown paced up and down, knowing he was on the same charge, deliberately striking an opponent. The judiciary heard the South player was concussed by the punch and taken from the field by ambulance. Considering his previously good record, Crichton was suspended for 4 weeks. Owen Wells had the ability to ignite a crowd. When the team was desperate for a point or two, he knew just where to get one. Wells played with the Falcons for the 80-81 season and came back to coach in 1987.
He was really attracted the crowd. The crowd certainly loved Owen, and as well as all the players did. And it's a shame that Newcastle only had him for that year, actually.
Wells was one of the first American NBA players to join the Australian League. His outgoing personality made him plenty of friends. He died in a Boston hospital, and although nobody is saying officially, it's believed he had the AIDS virus.
Well, it is unbelievable, yes, and you just never know, so you just got to keep it.
Owen Wells, dead at the age of 42. John John Dorahy may have only been in Newcastle for 18 months, but he made a lasting impression amongst the players he coached and the people he met. Today, he and his family completed the extensive job of packing up everything they own and storing it away while they spend at least 3 years in England. However, not everything is staying behind. Daughter Cara is making sure the things that matter also get to see the UK.
We put some memorabilia together over the past 18 months, and we've enjoyed Newcastle, and maybe one day we might be back.
15-year-old twins Jason and Dane have no worries at all about leaving school mid-term and heading off.
They enjoy the lifestyle. We have some very, very good friends over there now, naturally after having spent 4 years there. So, I mean, it's not as though we're going somewhere which is very cold. It's warm and pleasant for us as a family.
The new job might be the best the league world has to offer, but it also comes with intense pressure. And John will arrive in England with an instant headache. Star winger Martin O'Fire could face surgery after dislocating his shoulder playing for East. And whether things work out or not in the old dart, there's every possibility the Dorahys could be back in Newcastle. They own a house at Belmont and have no intention of selling. 16-year-old Maxine Nable set the alley on fire with a perfect game of 300. And for her trouble, she collected a cool $300. Scott Gooch turned his unorthodox style into a money earner, collecting $700 for taking out the match play final. Newcastle's AJ Foxford wasn't far behind him, finishing third, but one of the most promising performances came from 17-year-old Port Macquarie bowler Scott Sadler. He racked up plenty of spares and has been included in the Northern New South Wales rep team. Lynette Motby's concentration paid off. She cleaned up the ladies section. Another one of the up-and-comers, Karen Perry from the Central Coast, played well above her 16 years. Karen is only new to the sport, but did enough to finish in the finals, tipping out some more established players. Banking on the success of the Under-21 Grand Prix, the Gosford Bowl will stage the state and national titles next year.
A large crowd turned out at Dixie Park to watch the end of the three-day soccer carnival. The traditionally strong Hunter squad in the White Tops came within a whisker of tying, if not winning the game, but it was not to be in a match that had the spectators on edge for the full hour and a half. Metropolitan Southwest scored the sole goal of the game in the opening 10 minutes. From then on, there was some hot soccer action as Hunter tried to claw its way back into contention, while Southwest attempted to make their winning gap more comfortable. The goalkeepers were two of the busiest players on the park in the entertaining final, saving goal attempt after goal attempt. 3 yellow cards were issued, but it belied a friendly match in which nobody was sent off.
For the past few nights, the team has been training at Mitre 10 Stadium, the venue for this weekend's game. At times, the temperature has dropped to single figures, and coach Ken Kaiser hopes the Illawarra team get just as cold a reception from his players. Highfields Azuri has put its stamp on the side, contributing 7 players.
Highfields is such a well-organised club, administrative-wise. They've got a good coach in Jim Foley, and it's a pleasure and a Saturday to go and watch Highfields play, so it makes my job easier when clubs are organised like that.
A sprinkling of players from around the rest of Newcastle forms the nucleus of a well-drilled team.
I think it'll get down to skilled players trying to play skilled football.
Talent scouts from state league and national clubs will be watching on Saturday, with the possibility of later offering contracts.
I think primarily players should always look for that, to play first of all for themselves, play well, and then everything else falls into line.
The game will be played at Mitre 10 Stadium at 2:30 on Saturday. Matthew Johns has long been tipped as the heir apparent, but coach David Waite wants to bring him on sooner rather than later.
Matthew Johns is probably playing with a little bit more confidence and consistency, and we're looking forward to him settling down in first grade to see how he handles this third or fourth game at that level.
Adrian Brunker has been named in the squad, but at training tonight, his knee injury hampered him from running and he is still a doubtful starter. Also carrying an injury is Jason Martin. He was hit in the face with a surfboard over the weekend. Rodney Howe has kept his spot after filling in for injured forwards, along with Tony Butterfield. Paul Harrigan has the toughest deal though. He has to play on Sunday, then back up on Monday for the final State of Origin game.
He's got a job to do on Sunday, and hopefully he comes through unscathed in that and sets about his job on Monday night with the same fervour that he'll set about with it on Sunday.
Some good news for the Knights. Reserve grade sensation Andrew Johns today signed up until 1995. The club is now aggressively targeting its juniors to make sure they stay in Newcastle. The day started indoors with high-energy aerobics, Sam Newman flying the flag for Illawarra. However, Tracy Willis from Newcastle was more technical in her approach and came away with the win. Newcastle's step aerobic team of Lisa Johansson and Narelle Spruill completed the clean sweep. Across town, the Illawarra girls got a flogging on the netball court. The Newcastle shooters hardly missed a single goal, and it showed in the scoreline. Over at Birmingham Gardens, Newcastle applied plenty of pressure and had the opportunities, but just couldn't finish it off. The Illawarra boys tried all the fancy footwork, and it did eventually pay dividends. At number 2 Sports Ground, Illawarra were desperate to impress because it's their only representative league game of the year. The scores were locked 18-all at half-time, but 2 quick tries in 2 minutes from Newcastle halfback Tony Price early in the second half put the locals clear ahead. Speaking of heads, Newcastle captain Trevor Crowe will have a sore noggin tonight after a head clash with Illawarra's Gary Walsh. Illawarra bounced back after a penalty try was awarded for holding the ball player back, but Newcastle simply played all over the red and whites, and the boys from down south did manage to make the score a little more respectable with a try in the last minute of the game. The rugby game, on the other hand, was a very stop-go affair, neither side really getting the opportunity to stretch out. Illawarra scored first through the boot of Trevor Travaskis. That spurred the Newcastle boys into action, and they stepped into second gear and eventually got the winning points on the board.
Central Charlestown went to the lead in the 5th minute with this successful penalty kick by winger Craig Hammond. Shortly after, Maitland Shane Fernando replied, levelling it 2-all. But some bad ball handling by the pumpkin pickers gave the Butcher boys scoring opportunities, and the visitors took every chance. Steve Cage scoring under the posts in the 15th minute. Hammond converted, giving Central an 8-2 lead. Then fullback Tim Elwood went in. Central Charlestown went to the half-time break leading 12-2. Charlestown scored again in the second half, but that would be the last time. Maitland made a late break, turning the tables and taking the match 24-16.
Almost 200 players gathered for the weekend-long competition. 24 matches were thrashed out, with lower North Coast sides dominating the scoreboards. Port Macquarie won 5 of its grades against Casino Ballina. Kempsey rubbed it in by winning 6 straight. Late this afternoon, Casino Ballina was trying to keep Taree out of another straight sweep after it had already chalked up 5 of the 6th grade games. The competition season is now about halfway through. The next round will see Port Macquarie travel to Ballina.
Maitland's David King found plenty of gaps through the Waratah defence. Time and again he was able to slip a pass away, and it wasn't long before one of those passes turned into a try. In the second half, a lack of points turned into frustration for the Cheetahs, and Wayne Harvey felt the full brunt of a Craig Mealer forearm. Mealer was sent from the field and at the moment is facing the judiciary. No sooner had he walked off and Max Dawn and Rick Ryan were at it, both escaped any action from the referee. Maitland got back on track first and finished easy winners. Over at Charlestown, and the Butcher boys had plenty of enthusiasm, but not enough concentration. Daniel Olsen made space out wide and Sindel over for another try. Central's only leading light was Jason Edwards, his solo efforts making the score just respectable. And on Friday night, Mitchell Maguire put Lakes on the board first against Cessnock. Kyle Emerton was about to be penalised for a forearm to a tackler's throat, but Glenn George just wouldn't let go of him. West's 30-10 win over Toronto has them well clear on the ladder, with Charlestown still down the bottom. In Central Coast results over the weekend, and Terrigal were big winners over Toukley, Erina were very convincing over Munmora, and Wyong recorded a very handy win over Yamina.
Since turning pro in December, Wayne Stewart has been working 6 days a week, perfecting his swing. The 23-year-old from Toronto, Lake Macquarie, is a former Australian schoolboy champion and Australian amateur foursomes champion. He's already played in 9 events as a pro, his best to tie third with Peter Senior in the Cannon Challenge in Sydney. Another highlight, having a hit with his idol.
I was lucky enough to play with Stephen Elkington in the Australian Masters this year, and which was an experience. It was just incredible. It was great.
Wayne will be away for 3 months playing 16 tournaments in Canada, including the prestigious Canadian Open. Each event carries more than $150,000 in prize money. He'll also play in Hong Kong and Singapore. The young pro believes he can earn a good living on the circuit. He's already signed a manager to take care of the finances. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The Falcons simply didn't start well and let Magic get a commanding lead early. The 2,000-strong crowd tried to whip the Falcons into action, but it didn't have the desired effect. However, Terry Dozier still managed to stand off and bag them from wide out. Michael Johnson tried to lead the way and inspire his troops. Late in the fourth quarter, the Falcons found the surge they had been looking for, but it swept by Jason Joins. Peter Harvey was having his usual blinder, finding the ring from all over the court, but in the dying minutes he was moving towards a ruck when he was hit fair on the collarbone by Simon Curl. The referee failed to take any action, and Harvey was forced to leave the court in a fair amount of pain. From there, Magic tidied the game up and leaving the Falcons in about 6th place on the ladder. There's been a lot of changes since these two teams last met. Lakes have become the hot and cold performers of the league. One week turning it on, the next is as if they haven't won a game all year. West, on the other hand, have continued their winning way, but their unbeaten record has come to an end.
All the guys have spoke about that loss, and it's really taken the monkey off the back, and I think the guys appreciate now that the game, you're out there to play to win each week, but it's good to get a loss every now and then.
Lakes captain Steve Walters has pulled out of the game with a shoulder injury. Taking his place will be Craig Hibbert, just back from a spell in England.
Steve's a very good player, and I believe this year he's sort of curved his aggression a bit, and he's playing very good football. So yeah, tonight at training I'll do a little bit to adjust there.
The Lakes West game will be played at Harker Oval on Sunday. Tomorrow, plenty of interest will centre on the Maitland-Curry game. The Pumpkin Pickers have won 3 on the trot and are keen to make it 4. Their forwards are now working as a cohesive unit, and the backs are running the ball well. That game will be played at Curry Sports Ground starting at 3 o'clock. There are 2 other games on tomorrow. The home ground goes to the team in red. On Sunday, just the 2 games. of the players weren't quite old enough to tie their own shoelaces, but they did have the finer points of the game mastered. The carnival attracted 30 teams from under-8s through to under-16s from across the region.
There's a couple of teams from Gundarra, Walgett, Corindai, Narrabri, the 3 teams from Narrabri, the convent, the West School and the public primary school.
They put plenty of gusto into their games and revelled in the muddy conditions. Among the winners, plenty of the Gunnedah sides. In the under-8s, St Saviour's Gunnedah defeated Gunnedah South, and St Saviour's also took out the under-9s. Weewall got up in the under-10s division. Gunnedah South had another win, this time in the division. Narrabri took out the 14s and Corindai the 16s. Paul Harrigan was doing his usual Monday morning round of promotional engagements, but his mind was elsewhere.
There's nothing worse than waiting the last. Pretty hard for me for the simple reason everyone's been saying, oh, be confident, there's no problems, but I'm still one of those blokes who like to hear my name.
And when he found out he was in, the first person he rang was his dad. Selectors have basically picked the entire New South Wales forward pack, one of the biggest in years.
I think that's the way that Bob Fulton sort of likes his forward pack to be, a little bit on the big side, but the New Zealand likes to be very big also, and although we're big, we're still pretty mobile.
Harrigan will play for Newcastle this weekend against Canterbury and will then link up with the rest of the Aussie team on Monday for a week's training before flying to New Zealand.
The Oak Dairy Products factory at Hexham is the state's largest, handling up to 120 million litres of milk a year. 60% of that is packaged in plastic bottles. That's around 40,000 separate units every day. But it's not only the milk that produces benefits, now the containers can be recycled. Knight's Paul Harrigan on hand for today's launch hopes to spread the message to the whole family.
Instead of putting their plastics in the bin, that they recycle them at the depots that have been appointed. And if they do that, obviously it starts it up. So if they don't do that, the whole program is basically defunct. So I want to have a say that the kids do have a say in the environment.
It's a joint program between the Australian Cooperative Foods Company and Lake Macquarie Council. But it's here at GTC Recycling at Redhead that the action takes place. This baling machine crushes around 6,000 bottles into blocks weighing 250 kilograms. They're then transported to a Melbourne company that manufactures a range of products including compost bins, pallets and wheelie bins. Another small step that could make a big difference.
Recycling is important. It does make a contribution to waste management and it does assist the environment. So the more products that we can recycle, obviously it has a greater benefit for the environment and for the waste management problems that we face today.
And the idea could soon spread. Newcastle City Council is also considering introducing a similar scheme. Melinda Smith, NBN News. This year's Patterson Classic, which is also fourth round of the National Series, attracted a record 96 competitors in the 6 divisions, which range from novice to expert. The event was held on picturesque property near the Patterson Sports Ground, but competitors in today's downhill race weren't there to enjoy the view. The event is a race against the clock, and some riders reach speeds of up to 70 kilometres in parts of the 2-kilometre course. Victorian bike number 4 won the expert section in the time of 2 minutes and 18 seconds. Glenn Foreman from Lambton was best placed local. He came in 7th, but only 10 seconds separated him from the winner. In the expert woman division, Victoria's Rachel Bruce finished first, pipping Nicole Sutton from New Lambton by just 3 seconds.
It's been a lonely few months for Troy Waters. After pulling out only minutes before a major fight in Newcastle with a hand injury, his credibility has been on the line. Today he finished up his Australian sparring sessions. On June 19, he will meet one of the world's most feared boxers, Terry Norris. Norris is now regarded as the best fighter in the world, but his reputation doesn't face Troy.
He's a good mover, he's a good puncher. He's got good all-round skills, but I think that I'm going to be stronger and fitter and more determined than he is. And
Waters believes he's totally focused on taking the title and is relieved that after 13 years of dreaming, he now gets a chance.
You can't go over there saying, well, maybe I'll win or I want to win. You know, I will win, and I'm certainly going to bring that title back home.
And he has every confidence his hand won't let him down again.
It's come good, you know. I had to take quite a couple of weeks of training, so just to let it mend, you know, to give it that full rest. But now we're back into full training and everything's going great for.
He flies out tomorrow and will spend the next few weeks sparring and training with older brother Guy. Guy will also fight on the same night on the undercard. The race got underway a Terrigal 15 minutes late due to the enormous rush in last-minute entries, and it wasn't long before they formed a human chain, snaking its way along Terrigal Drive. And the Sunday significance wasn't lost on some. For others, it was their first surf to City, but they weren't going to do it the hard way. 62-year-old David Gervin flashed through the pack as usual, upstaging many of his younger counterparts. Up front and Central Coast runner Glenn Ritchie in the blue, and Sydney's Nicholas Cope jostled for the lead. Through the Erina Straits they went stride for stride, and when Ritchie slowed for water, Cope pulled away with 3 kilometres to go. He crossed the line unchallenged, finishing the 11 kilometres in 33 minutes and 57 seconds.
I didn't know how I'd go. I'm pretty inconsistent. One week I'm bad, one week I'm good, so it's pretty hard to tell how I'm going to go.
Ritchie came in second, and 3 minutes behind him was the first woman, Sydney's Michelle Dillon. The Novas in the green were doing pretty well in the competition until last night. The losses cost them a position in the top 4. The Novas had to fight for every point and every chance of possession. They kept in touch through the first half with some crafty intercepts. The Bayside were more determined under the basket, snatching rebounds and making the most of their scoring chances. The Newcastle girls realised pretty physical play if they were to have a chance. Chris Walmsley kept the pressure up in defence and walked away with a fat lip for her trouble, thanks to an accidental head clash. Bayside drew too many free shots and finished with a handy lead. Brad Goddard knew the kick was coming, but the ball appeared to have a mind of its own. Des Hasler awarded the try, even though he was offside. But a few minutes later, as luck would have it, a bouncing ball this time helped the Knights. Mark Sargent kept the momentum rolling. Manly started to look desperate. This trip on Brad Goddard, though, going unnoticed. In the second half, Matthew Rodwell pulled off a trick that would sit well in any juggler's repertoire. With 5 minutes to go, Adrian Brunker grabbed a great try after backing up, but the pressure to level the scores took its toll. With the crowd breathing a collective groan, there wasn't a crack big enough to swallow him up. The front-on tackling style that has become a Knights trademark could soon come in for special attention from the league. In the past 2 games, 4 opposition players have been carried off with serious knee injuries. League executive Mick Stone said technically the tackles are not illegal, but they will investigate if complaints are made. Tim Madison and Matthew Johns were mentioned in the referee's report over a spear tackle, but late this afternoon had not been cited. The Knights reserve grade again had the crowd on their feet. With seconds to go, Andrew Johns scored one of the most deserved wins of the year. The reserves are equal first on the ladder and looking good for a grand final berth. Darren Curtis, NBN News. Wipe-on tan has been used by bodybuilders for years, the darker colour helping to enhance their muscle definition, but Swansea's Darryl Toff shocked everyone walking on stage without any. The pale skin stunned judges, but apparently didn't detract from his efforts. He still managed a second place. Port Kembla's Eloy Avala looked to be enjoying himself, his enthusiasm grabbing him a second as well for his division. These bodybuilders will all line up again in October for the state titles in Sydney, trying to win their way back to Newcastle for the Nationals in late October. The importance of tomorrow's game hasn't been lost on the Falcons. If they get back on the rails and rack up a few wins, they could be back in 4th spot before the playoffs. And 4th spot is strategically the ideal place on the ladder. Captain Terry Dozier has a lot on his mind following the death of his cousin in the United States and will fly home on Sunday for the funeral. The Falcons beat the Cannons in the first round, and if they play the whole game like they started last week's, there isn't a team who can stand in their way. Leading the decibel charge will be the indoor bike races at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre tomorrow night. The floor is again being covered with clay to form an extremely tight circuit, and when you get them four wide, you can expect someone's going to come off second best. Local riders will be among the state's best, burning the methanol from 7 o'clock. And at Raymond Terrace, the next round of the State Hill Climb Series will go ahead whether the track is wet or not. Cars that are able to qualify for road registration and other pure sporty types will make up the field, all of their drivers determined to push it.
The times have got down very fast, and to win your class, in any class at all, you've got to be going really quick. And most of the cars are right on the edge, right on the limit of being out of control at times on a lot of the corners.
Most cars cover the 1,100 metres of track in just over 30 seconds. And the Newcastle Kart Racing Club will host the final round of the City Series at their West Walls End track over the weekend. Points from this weekend's competition will determine the series winners after they've been competing for 6 months.
These young players represent the cream of both the state's public and Catholic high schools. Yesterday, the under-16s combined Catholic colleges team in the dark shirts won the first round game 2-1. Today, the combined high schools team was out to even the score at Newcastle's Hockey Centre. The challenge match was the first time team members had played together, travelling from as far north as Ballina and south to Nowra. It was a tough game, with both sides shooting some near misses at either end. With the score 0-0 at half-time, some sideline encouragement from coach Judy Lang saw the combined high school side shoot a field goal midway during second half and win the game. The overall challenge results a drawn series. On Sunday, both sides will take to the field again during the National Championships, where teams from across the country will travel to Newcastle for the big event.
South Australia in the yellow and Queensland in the white tops provided the feature match of today's games, with the Queenslanders keen to show they're strong contenders to take the title. Queensland's Suzanne Faulkner wasted no time doing just that, chalking up goal number 1 in the game's first few minutes. The Sunshine State continued to penetrate South Australia's defence, the speed of Jodie Cullum, wearing number 10, proving a thorn in the opposition side. Queensland then turned on another goal through some controlled play, right-wing striker Erin Motes finishing off. Within minutes, South Australia replied, Lucy Huss making good use of a penalty corner. Not happy with leading 2-1, Queensland opened the floodgates in the second half to take the game 7-1. The goals weren't as plentiful in the clash between Victoria in the dark blue and the New South Wales development side in the light blue. The home state threatened on many occasions, but were unable to finish off in the goal circle. Victoria were more efficient, scoring early in the first half and coming close on other occasions. Final score, Victoria 1, New South Wales 0. In other games played today, Western Australia beat the ACT 6-0, while New South Wales had a 2-0 victory over the Northern Territory. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
It was a blow that any heavyweight boxer would be proud of. Greg Price went down for the count and stayed that way for a good 5 minutes. Last night, Brendan Dooley was feeling anything but proud when he faced the judiciary. Referee Paul Lovett, armed with video of the incident, had no doubt that the blow was intentional. Although Dooley did plead guilty, his legal representative, Gavin Hanrahan, said the punch was in retaliation to earlier attacks by West players. The judiciary said that had nothing to do with it, but considering his previously good record, ruled he cannot play again for 1993. The 3 panel members were less than impressed with the next player before them, South Centre Simon Cook. Cook was sent off for swearing and showing disrespect also to referee Lovett. Cook, who refused to appear last week, did plead guilty and was suspended for 4 games in 1994. It's the first time the pair have seen each other in the flesh, and after seeing a video of Kostya's fighting style, Livingston Bramble was very quiet.
I'm scared.
Costa's trainer John Lewis believes Bramble is publicly underrating himself. However, his wealth of experience will give the Russian his first good workout.
I just hope that he's as good as what I think he is, because then I'll see the performance of Costa will be greatly multiplied by what he's shown us in the past.
Within seconds of the press conference finishing, Bramble was out of his seat and on his way back to the hotel. Costa, meanwhile, showed his new boxing trick to improve eye-to-hand contact. He's become so proficient, he's now trying it with his eyes closed. But there's no doubt he will have both eyes open when he steps into the ring on Monday night. The Curry side was bolstered with the return of Glenn Messenger. The New South Wales Country Rugby League last night quashed his 10-week suspension for allegedly breaking Neil Baker's jaw last month. However, Lakes wasted no time jolting Curry out of their happy mood. One big hit ended Messenger's game in the first 10 minutes. He was forced to leave the field with a nasty back injury. That spurred the Bulldogs on, and Brian Quinton, running from broken play, put them on the board first. 7 minutes later, some nifty ball handling put them over again. Encouraged by a large crowd, their confidence was sky high. Quinton unloading mid-tackle to start fullback Darrell Williams on a 50-metre sprint to the line. At half-time, Lakes coach Steve Walters told his players they were by no means out of it. Lakes had their opportunities and got over the line a number of times, but just couldn't finish. Lakes will now play the winner of tomorrow night's semi between Souths and Waratah, while Curry play West next Sunday.
Members of the East Maitland Bowling Club were in a state of stunned disbelief when they heard of the deaths of Peter and Monica Azimus. The pair was well known. Peter, aged 60, a popular past president and life member of the club and the Hunter District Bowling Association.
Of course, Peter was an outstanding lawn bowler himself, but going back in years to the late 50s and the 60s, he was a prominent rugby league player, a front row forward, and with the Maitland Club, and that was in, some of the golden years of rugby league in Maitland. Very, very tough competitor on the field.
Sports commentator Gary Harley broke the sad news to a morning radio audience, but the family and close friends of the couple were informed of the fatal smash last night. Peter and Monica Azimus and Max Watson from Lemon Tree Passage had driven to Wagga for a surprise party for an old friend. Mr. Watson, who was a passenger in the car, remains in a stable condition in Yass Hospital. The couple is survived by a large family. Many friends and relatives are expected to pay their last respects at a funeral service at Maitland's St Joseph Church later this week.
Highly respected family, the Asmus family, big family. His youngest son, Scott, who I know very well, was a member of the Knights SG ball team this year, in 1993. Very good sporting family.
Both teams are no strangers to playing in the dark. Waratah last week punished Souths in the elimination semi. Although Waratah led at half-time and the score didn't change, the Cheetahs know you can't rest easy, even if you have a handy lead.
Semi-final football, even if you're leading by 10 points, you can always, the team that's going down can always come on top again, because it's all different football. Everybody sort of wants to get out there and give their best shot.
If Lakes are behind at the break, there's every chance they will come out firing. Coach Steve Walters is rated one of the best dressing shed lecturers around and can turn on an inspirational mouthful. Sunday's semi between Wests and Curry at Harker Oval will be the chance for both sides to get rid of some bad. Confident the game will be won on a second-half performance.
We've been outscored a few times in the second half, and I've sort of maintained to our guys if we can stick to our guns in the first half and hold them, I think we can get away with it in the second half.
We've been in front at half-time our last 4 games and maybe slipped away a little bit in the second half. Hopefully things will go to plan and we are in front at half-time, but I wouldn't mind if it's 0-0 at half-time.
Hockey is a worldwide sport, its highest honours linked with Olympic representation. Attaining that standard means years of competition, personal sacrifices and pressure. Australian hockey officials are well aware of how easily players can burn out.
They have to need to see other things in the game than just winning. They've got to realise the importance of it, but it's got to be put in the context of all the other good things about this, the educational part of it, the social part of it.
The championships are the first time the players are seen by national selectors. The title's classed as the nursery of future champions. But selectors believe the recipe for success not only rests with raw talent, hence the importance placed on scheduling this trip to Old Sydney Town near Gosford during the championships.
It's very important that we don't let our young players be pressured too much at this age. And
competitiveness is something 15-year-old Megan Sargent is familiar with. A member of the New South Wales team, the Newcastle player comes from a sporting family. Her mother was an Olympic swimmer, her father a former Australian surf lifesaving champion. Megan's aspirations are just as high, but her attitude reflects the holistic approach.
Yeah, you have to be able to enjoy yourself out there on the field. If you take it too serious, then it's just not fun anymore. You just got to have fun out there on the field.
The Foster Veterans Tennis Tournament attracted a huge field in its first year. 180 people entered from as far north as Tweed Heads, south to Canberra and as far west as Inverell. The preliminary heats were held today, and the tournament is set to hot up tomorrow for the finals. Foster Tennis Club is hosting the event. However, some of the games have been played at the Tuncurry and Leagues Club courts. Categories being contested include singles, doubles and mixed doubles, with the age divisions being over 40s, over 50s and over 60s. Foster Tennis Club is keen to make the Veterans Tournament an annual event.
Queensland in the maroon and white yesterday accounted for the New South Wales Development Squad 4-1, and today they did much the same against the Northern Territory. The Territory goalie stood her ground early in the game and pulled off some good saves. However, the sheer number of times the Queenslanders mounted raids against her goal meant that something had to give. The Northern Territory forwards were probably just as good, but were very rarely given a chance. Last year, Queensland had 4 players named in the Australian squad, and already they appear to be putting a mortgage on a few places again. New South Wales have entered 2 teams, a first 15 and a development squad. The first 15 are so far undefeated. However, the development squad this afternoon played South Australia. Both teams were a pretty even match, but the Sandgropers eventually won 4-0. Kostya hardly had time to unpack his bags this afternoon before Johnny Lewis had him in the ring against Justin Rousel. With a week to go before the fight, boxers normally do not spar in case they're accidentally cut or injured. So it's a true mark of concern that Lewis doesn't think Kostya has had enough hard minutes.
So I'd like to think that we'd come up here today and have it all behind us, a week away from the fight, but what we've got to do, we've got to do. You can't always do something the way you want it to be done.
Lewis has no doubts, though, that Kostya will win and be on his way to challenge for a world title later this year.
If I start talking to you about what I think about Kostya, we'll be here for an hour. So, we're confident, as we would be if we fought anybody in the world.
And in typical Russian fashion, Kostya has an answer for Bramble's claim that he'll put him to sleep.
He talked by his mouth and talked by my hand.
Livingston Bramble was half an hour late for his training session this afternoon and took twice as long to finally climb into the ring to begin his warm-up. Bramble loves to dance and does all his training to reggae music and was more than happy to show off his fancy footwork. But that's where the cooperation finished. When it came time to spar, Livingston decided that he didn't want any pictures taken of his workout and ordered the cameraman leave the room. However, we can report that his sparring partner, Newcastle's Lance Hobson, did land 3 or 4 good blows on his nose. Darren Curtis, NBN News.
About 400 students and parents were at Waratah Oval for the quarter-final of the prestigious Under-14 Boys Contest. In the tradition of schoolboy football, the game was a spectacle of young talent and enthusiasm. Dapto, playing in the yellow and red tops, took a narrow 14-12 lead after this crossfield chip was pounced on by Michael Finch. In a seesawing match, Waratah 5'8" Troy Saxby weaved through a hive of Dapto players to score this great individual try just before half-time, putting his team in front 18-14. Dapto High came out firing in the second half, with lock Paul Del Santo scoring this try to level the scores 18-all. However, with 10 minutes left in the game, Waratah regained its lead with this try to halfback and captain Ben Donaldson. 5/8 Troy Saxby sealed the victory 28-18 with another solo effort. Waratah will play its semi-final opponent in 2 weeks.
It was probably one of the ugliest pieces of boxing in Newcastle for years. After a few dramatic rounds, Craig Peavy was disqualified for intentionally headbutting Justin Rousell. A rematch a few months later was postponed because Rousell's eye hadn't healed. Craig Peavy says the wait to get back into the ring against each other has left a fire in his belly.
The only thing I think when I get in the ring now to fight Justin is he stopped me from becoming the best, and I'm going to pull his head off.
Rousell says he's just as determined, but a bit wiser for the earlier bout.
Let's just say once bitten, twice shy. I don't think his head's going to get within a cooey of me.
Peavy says after 15 years of sweating and putting his body on the line without the chance for a world title, a loss on Monday night at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre will finish his career.
If he beats me fair and square, I will retire on the night. Well, if that's the case, maybe I'll have to, because I'm going to win on Monday night. That's definite. I know that 100%.
To make sure he's fully prepared, Rousell has been sparring with Kosh Jizu. One thing for sure, though, is there's bound to be blood spilled between Rousell and Cardiff's favourite boxing son on Monday night. Darren Curtis, NBN News.
Right from the word go, the Queensland side looked like a smart outfit, leaving the previously strong New South Wales side constantly on the defensive. Dressed in their state's traditional colours, Queensland dominated the first half, and with attempts like this one, Queensland was unlucky not to score early. But whatever the Blues coach said to her side at half-time seemed to work. New South Wales looking like a new team in the second half. With attempts by both teams to put points on the scoreboard falling by the wayside, both sides were getting frustrated. A short time later, Karen Smith converted a short corner, giving Queensland the lead. That seemed to add fuel to New South Wales' fire. Captain Kimberly Robards struck back a few moments later. Neck and neck with only 10 minutes to go, you could be forgiven for thinking this was a grand final. Once again, Queensland's Karen Smith brought the Maroons out of a tight situation, scoring again. Queensland won the match 2-1. Games continue tomorrow.
Few people who follow the Knights could forget that cold and windy night at Tweed Heads when the Gold Coast got their only competition points for the year. A couple of dubious decisions and some ordinary defence let the goals fly high. That win hurt, and everyone will be out to redress the last result, and farewell Michael Hagan, David Boyd, Adrian Brunker and Tony Kemp with a thumping win. Mark Sargent will only be able to offer his support from the sideline though, a finger injury keeping him out. All the players who are leaving have played a major role with the Knights on and off the field, and you can expect a few tears on Sunday when the final siren goes. The weigh-in was set down for 11:30 and all the boxers were there but Livingston Bramble. Promoter Bill Morty had sent a car to pick him up from his motel, but he kept the driver waiting. With valuable eating time slipping away and no show by Bramble, things were starting to look bleak. No sooner had the time limit been set and the latecomer strolled in. His first weigh-in put him half a kilo overweight. He was told by officials that he had to drop to the limit. Initially he refused and walked out, demanding that another set of scales be used. After nearly an hour of haggling, Bramble decided to get into the sauna and try and sweat the weight off. He then complained that the sweat was caught in his hair and made him heavier. Finally, he stood on the scales and was still over. By now, tempers were starting to fray, and despite Costa weighing in earlier, Bramble's camp wanted him back on the scales, even though he was given the all-clear to drink and eat. Costa passed without a drama. Bramble tried again, but once more complained the scales were wrong. His attorney then threatened to call it all off. Finally, Costa's trainer gave in and agreed to let Bramble fight over the limit.
I think really the only reason we did this was because there would have been 4,000 disappointed fans out there, and these people have got behind Costa. They would have been grossly disappointed, but if they knew what went on here today, I'm sure that their support for Costa tonight will almost lift the roof off the stadium.
Former champ turned commentator Jeff Fennick believes the fight will go 5 rounds.
Because this you stay knocked out, whether he cuts your eye, hits you in the chin, hits you in the head, you're knocked out.
In the main preliminary bout, Craig Peavy and Justin Rousel will slog it out again. Both fighters came in underweight, however Peavy didn't miss with the sledging. The fight is a near sellout, but to make sure people in Newcastle can still see the fight live due to the Sky Channel blackout, big screens have been set up next to the entertainment centre. Waratah High and the Maroon were always in the box seat in their Buckley Shield game against Singleton. The Blues tried to keep Waratah pinned in their own quarter, but Brendan Fulp always managed to get his side out of trouble, running in 5 tries. Singleton never gave up trying though, Jamie Medhurst making the score respectable with just minutes to go. If losing the game wasn't bad enough, centre Matthew Martin was carried from the field after suffering a serious knee injury. In the University Shield, pre-game favourites Muswellbrook were stunned by a try from Warners Bay in the opening minutes. That forced the home side to thump their way back into contention. Stephen Boney caused all sorts of headaches for his opposition. His efforts settled Muswellbrook down, prompting them to run in 2 tries in just 3 minutes. Warners Bay forgot their discipline and dropped out of the game by giving away penalties. Muswellbrook are now one of the last 8 teams in the competition and play Bega in a quarter-final in 2 weeks' time.
The North Coast Academy of Sport offers talented youths the chance of intensive training without having to travel to the Australian Institute of Sport in Canberra or the New South Wales Academy in Sydney. Port Macquarie is at the bottom end of the North Coast Academy's region, and local children usually have to travel to the academy base in Lismore for training. However, this weekend, the academy has travelled south, conducting a 2-day training session on the grounds of Westport Technology High School. The program covers a whole range of cricket training, including fitness testing, weight training, video sessions and work with Len Pascoe. Organisers hope the 17 boys and 3 girl cricketers who make up the squad will use the skills learned to further their sporting careers and maybe one day emulate the feats of Lenny Pascoe.
Costa's record in Newcastle has been nothing short of brilliant. None of his fights have even gone 1 round. Former world champ Livingston Bramble doesn't think Costa's record is a worry.
No, I don't even know the guy's name. I really don't. I've never seen no video because the promoter, I think his name is Bill, I don't know whatever his name is, but he didn't give us a tape, so we really don't know the guy.
Although he hasn't seen Costa, that didn't stop him throwing the first few verbal jabs.
I think one thing when I go in the ring, to knock you out. You're not going to see Bramble running around the ring like a Muhammad Ali. I come right to put you to sleep.
When he arrived at the airport with his entourage, he thought the whole of Australia was waiting for him.
I was so happy at the airport, you know, when I got off the plane and see how beautiful the place was. I just said, Haile Selassie's here, you know, and I just started screaming and yelling, you know, hey, Rastaman is here. And, you know, I'm telling you people, you got a Rastaman in town.
Apart from the fight, Bramble wants to do some fancy footwork on the dance floors around town while he's here.
It's not a thing where you go out there looking for girls. I just go out there and I love to dance. I will dance alone. It's no big deal. I just love to dance. It's an exercise to me.
Like no other team in the competition, Curry is feeling the weight of a whole community to come up with a winning result. Last night, the club trainer was still pushing the Bulldogs hard, making sure they ran through any soreness left over from last week. And although they put on a brave face, most of the side is having trouble with nerves.
A couple of other younger players have said that, but you know, I've spoken to them all and I'm sure they'll come through pretty good because there's a lot of experience there with Glenn Miller and Brian Quinton, Phil Williams, Terry Bender, so they'll all be okay.
The only change to the Curry lineup is Paul Romanik replacing the suspended Brendan Dooley. Last time Lakes and Curry met, the Bulldogs set up a winning lead by half-time, and they hope to do it again.
Without a doubt, in the first 20 minutes, whoever can be in control the ball and end up on top will win the game, I think.
Lakes forward Paul Tideman knows not to count his chicks before they hatch, even if the Seagulls have a good lead at the break.
It's going to be a big experience for a lot of us. I guess the nerves are going to get to us a bit, but you know, we know what we've got to do, so we're just going to get out there and give it our best shot.
The 11:30 start at Marathon Stadium doesn't worry Lakes either. Tideman says it will actually help them.
A lot of us have played President's Cup football, so we're more or less used to running out at 12 o'clock in the middle of the day at the IC, so come that time Sunday, you know, we're not going to be thinking about it then.
Meanwhile, the third and reserve grade finals are underway now at Home Court Field at Charlestown.
Coming into today's games, Queensland, New South Wales and Western Australia were tied on the top of the ladder on 6 points each. After Queensland's defeat of New South Wales yesterday, today's match between Western Australia and Queensland was vital in sorting the winner from the rest. Queensland in the maroon and white was favourite going into the game, but WA wasn't going to give up without a tussle. The first half remained scoreless. Attempts by both teams to get close to the goal were foiled by keepers Elizabeth Marsden and Tammy Wolfe. In the second half, however, WA proved too in the game 2 points. It was a practice match for New South Wales today. They played a state development squad, winning 4-0. Western Australia on 8 points. New South Wales and Queensland stay on 6. The competition winds up on Sunday. The two sides started on an even keel, splitting victories on their two previous encounters. The scores in the first quarter seesawed, both sides playing a quick, aggressive game. Gazza Sports shooters in the grey skirts took a while to find range. However, by quarter time, Gazza's had established a narrow 8-7 lead. Gazza's maintained this advantage in the second quarter, at times throwing everything into what's meant to be a non-contact sport. However, strong defence like this from Brewers' Martine Archer saw them slowly begin to peg Gazza's back. At times, Brewers using a variety of passes to get the points on the board. Leading 23-19 at the start of the final quarter, Brewers continued to pull away, taking the game 32-24.
It was a clash of little consequence in the competition, but important for pride and loyal fans. Club stalwarts Michael Hagan and David Boyd were playing their last game with the Knights, and Tower of Strength Marks dragged himself back from injury to go around with his mates. But there was no sentimentality spared on Wally Lewis's Gold Coast side. Mark Landville in with the early points. Robbie McCormick finishing off a storming attack by Adam Muir. The Seagulls pulled Sarge up, but McCormick gave the burst extra legs. Jamie Ainscough was home. An unmarked Matthew Johns proved a loose cannon, moments later taking O'Davis with him again. Score 34-2 at half-time, and the Gold Coast bruising wasn't over yet. Peter Gill led a one-man crusade for the Gold Coast's honour, but Stephen Crowe swooped in for more Knights points. David Boyd into the record books with a conversion. Final score 50-6. Knights reserve grade turned it on for the outgoing Brunker and Kemp, 20-4 against Gold Coast.
The grand final came down to the two Newcastle Association teams. Newcastle won in the cream bibs and Newcastle 2 in the blue. Goal attack Jody Hoare and shooting partner Kelly Wolven had far too much experience for their younger counterparts, bagging goals from all over the circle. The rain made the court surface fairly slippery, but it didn't seem to bother either side as they moved the ball around. The final was also a test of marital bliss for Bruce and Mary Ann Linky. Bruce coaches the number 2s, while wife Mary Ann has charge of the number 1s. We're not sure if they had an insight into each other's game plans, but Mary Ann's team had the better run of play in the second half and just scraped home.
The judiciary turned up to Newcastle Leagues Club expecting a busy night, having 3 players up for hearing. However, the workload was quickly lightened, with word that South's prop Simon Cook wasn't appearing. South President John Fleming announced the absence of Cook, who was sent off during Sunday's semi-final against Waratah Mayfield for abusing referee Paul Lovett, seen here wearing a white and maroon jacket. Until Cook fronts the judiciary, he stood down. South prop Michael Varnum also appeared before the judiciary following an incident in the game against Central on July 31st. Varnum was cited by the league's disciplinary committee for headbutting. However, last night, the judiciary, consisting of Clem Rankin, Chairman Col Elliott and Kevin Schott, dismissed the case, adding it couldn't be sure Varnum had deliberately struck another player. Toronto captain coach Mal Graham, wearing the pattern shirt, presented his case himself. First, the incident in which Graham was reported for a high tackle against West 5'8" Steve Story on August 1st was viewed. Graham then pleaded guilty to recklessly attacking Story's head. He was suspended for 3 premiership matches next season. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
The Falcons knew it was going to be one of the toughest games of the year. Terry Dozier and Paul Kuiper led the charge, proving just about unstoppable. Paul Kuiper missed only 2 shots for the whole game, and he loved the feeling. Dozier was all over the court. If he wasn't lobbing in 3-pointers, he was chasing down a loose ball or pressuring for a turnover. Dozier's enthusiasm was infectious. Al Green bagged himself a few 3-pointers, and Grant Kruger doubled his scoring average. The Kings tried everything in the dying minutes, but the Falcons were just more determined to finish winners. Both sides knew the most aggressive team would probably win. Peter Jenner found that plenty of hands made light work, and he basically only had to fall over the line. Paul Romanik found brute force was more his style than fancy hands. Curry may have been behind at the start of the second half, but you would never have known. They made West tackle their hearts out for a good 10 minutes before they finally found the gap. Brendan Dooley didn't get to see much more of his side's performance. He was sent off after turning Greg Price's lights out. Not long after, a swinging arm from Glenn Miller reignited the tension, and it was all on again. The former Knight could also face the judiciary after an incident in back play that has Scott Bradley booking an appointment with his chiropractor. West preferred to let their feet handle the action and ran in a length of the field try that started from absolutely nothing. And at Carl Oval last night, Lake surprised Waratah with their enthusiasm. 2 minutes later, Craig Kimmerley broke the defence again and was making it look like easy work. The Seagull forwards weren't afraid of the hard work and outclassed the more fancied Waratah pack. The Cheetahs' only spark came from Gary Fairhurst with a great sprint to the line. Lake showed last night that they can make the best of any opportunity and punish a side for a simple mistake. In lower grades, South's reserves are through to the final, along with West's in 3rd grade. A quick glance down Curry's main street and the tricolours are everywhere, swinging from street posts and plastered across shop windows. The town's bakers are once again adding their traditional support with coloured loaves of bread and cakes. The hot bread shop sold out of red and white and blue loaves by 8 o'clock this morning and took orders for at least another 100 tomorrow. Cake shops have been swamped with requests for decorated niceties, and the credit union is giving something back to eager fans with every deposit. Even the florists are run off their feet, supplying hundreds of curry bunches. A convoy of 10 buses will take people to the game on Sunday, so the depth of support isn't lost on the players.
It'll be public holiday Monday up there, and probably 3 or 4 days on the drink.
Glenn Miller is the team's unofficial leader in the forwards, and he's making sure the same faults aren't repeated that cost Curry the semi-final against West a few weeks ago.
We'll play them different to what we did last time. I think we played them wrong in the last semi. Other than that, I think it'll be very hard, very close.
West make no secret that they must contain Steve Linnane and try-scoring sensation Brian Quinton if they're to win.
There's always 2 sides to a story like this. If you shut one down, there's always something else open.
And if Curry do win on Sunday, you can guarantee the town will erupt into its biggest party for years. Darren Curtis, NBN News.
Landing on the wrong side of the law was probably the best thing that ever happened to Craig Anderson.
And then I got caught with the police one day, and then they asked me, have I ever thought about racing? Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
His career has progressed in leaps and bounds since that day. This year he was snatched up by Yamaha as one of only 3 Australians on the Motorcycle Giants books. The company sent him to Indonesia in June to compete in an open men's event. In front of a crowd of 35,000 people and racing against riders twice his age, Craig relished his first crack at the big boys.
I won the whole 3 races, but they took 1 lap off me. So, because I crashed next to a jump and I got up and I didn't turn around and go back over it. So they took 1 lap off me and I ended up second overall, but I was the fastest out of all of them.
However, the gain has not been without pain. Craig suffered a fractured pelvis, he's broken an arm, leg and both his thumbs, and has also dislocated his foot.
No, not at all. I've had a few friends that broke their neck and no, that don't worry me at all.
Craig will go to Indonesia again next month for another men's competition. Yamaha is grooming him to enter the rich American pro circuit early next year after finishing his school certificate this year.
As soon as the Curry first grade squad walked into the club, they were mobbed by enthusiastic fans. Everyone wanted their commemorative T-shirts signed, and after an hour most of the team looked to have writer's cramp. The crowd bought up hundreds of shirts, some to wear to the game on Sunday, others to keep as unstained souvenirs. Finally, the squad managed to find a quiet moment and tucked into a traditional steak and chips. No such diets out western suburbs way. Coach Neil Baker wants his players to be hungry for Sunday's game. Despite breaking his jaw only 5 weeks ago, Baker hasn't completely ruled out a return and insists he has a surprise player on the bench. Even if Baker doesn't take the field, he will know just how to hand out the advice in the change rooms.
Lead by example, mate. Everyone's going with you. Everyone's going well. You're good off pace. All you go short will be perfect.
Both teams can be seen again at tomorrow's grand final public breakfast at the Newcastle Leagues Club. The Falcons' determination was obvious from the start. Terry Dozier and Everett Stevens didn't want to waste a chance. For the first time this year, Grant Kruger played the entire first quarter without a foul against him. In fact, he drew half a dozen. Simon O'Donnell had confidence to burn and consistently blocked out the Rollers' big guns. The Falcons' defence was intense. At one point, their marking was so strong, they forced the Gold Coast to blow the shot clock, resulting in a turnover. Mike Mitchell reminded them, though, that any lapses proved costly. With 40 seconds to go, the scores were locked until Everett Stevens drew a foul and easily made the 2 points. Now there were only seconds left and a 3-pointer could have won the game, but the Falcons' defence stayed firm. A narrow margin, but it could have been by 100 if the players' reaction was anything to go by. Although tomorrow is basically Curry and West Day, representatives of all the clubs made the effort to come to this morning's feast. Some of the game's current and former stars swapped stories and anecdotes about their grand final appearances. The more experienced players from Curry and West try to make sure the height doesn't affect the younger members of their squads. As soon as the formalities were over, Steve Linnane took his side to check out number 1 sports ground. It's the first time the Bulldogs have had a chance to step through the layout. The verdict? Both sides want to play on a dry ground.
A massive crowd filled the stadium at Bird Street No. 1 Oval for the showdown yesterday afternoon. The Kempsey Cannonballs, wearing the orange shirts, were defending premiers and were keen to win back-to-back titles, but the Port Macquarie Pirates had other ideas. The first half of the game was a tough and entertaining affair, with both teams attempting to gain the upper hand without success. As the second half wore on, it looked like neither team would score a point. However, with 10 minutes to go, the floodgates opened. This try from breakaway Steve Dobbins sealed the match for the Cannonballs. The Pirates scored their only points of the game with this unconverted try. Fullback Johnny Shea was named man of the match for his outstanding kicking and defensive game. It was a double-header for Kempsey, with the side winning their grand final against Dorrigo 16-6.
It's make or break time for the Falcons, fighting to stay in the race for the NBL playoffs.
From now on, we have 10 more games to go. Every game is a very important game for us. So this one at home, we got to get off this losing streak, and I think this will be the game we'll do it in.
The traditional home ground advantage hasn't helped the Falcons recently, losing their last 4. They've gone down to good sides, but Newcastle must beat the struggling Geelong Supercats.
I think we got to get more hungrier, and once we do that, I think we can play against anybody in the league.
There has been some fitness scares, with Kuiper suffering the flu and Al Green a bruised windpipe, but both players should be okay by tomorrow night.
At a Carl Oval last night, Lake surprised Waratah with their enthusiasm. 2 minutes later, Craig Kimmerley broke the defence again and was making it look like easy work. The Seagull forwards weren't afraid of the hard work and outclassed the more fancied Waratah pack. The Cheetahs' only spark came from Gary Fairhurst with a great sprint to the line. Lake showed last night that they can make the best of any opportunity and punish a side for a simple mistake. In lower grades, South's reserves are through to the final, along with West's in third grade. Dooley's second half send-off proved very costly for Curry. West were then able to get the upper hand and run in a few tries and grand final berth. The game could have gone either way up to that point, and Curry officials will be less than impressed with Dooley's efforts. The Bulldogs will now play a very impressive Lakes outfit at Marathon Stadium on Sunday at the unusual time of 11:30 as a curtain raiser to the night's Gold Coast game. The reserve grade and third grade finals will be played on Friday night at Charlestown. West took the opportunity to try out number 1 this afternoon. For most of the year, the sports ground is the premier Aussie rules ground in the area, but a simple remarking will transform it into a grand final league pitch. West coach Neil Baker wanted his kickers and playmakers to get a feel for the ground and to try and work out the surface. In the background today, one of the toughest players around was helping the Rosellas out. Prop Tony McDonald is back to full fitness after 16 weeks on the sideline due to a broken jaw. Curry will also test out number 1 later this week, but tonight they settled for the sanctuary of the Curry Sports Ground. With the help of twin daughters Lauren and Melissa, Knights captain Michael Hagan finished up the packing this morning. The next 2 years of his family's lives will be spent in England while he plays for Halifax. The OS stint requiring some treasured memories get packed away. In his 5 years with the Knights, Hagan didn't miss one game.
That's something I'm grateful for, and hopefully I can get through Sunday unscathed and continue that sort of record in England.
Across town, Adrian Bronca was making some of his last deliveries. Despite flourishing business interests in the town, Bronca is quite happy to head to the Gold Coast after a kick against Manly a few weeks ago prompted a spate of vicious personal attacks.
I copped a fair bit of a bag, and actually my fuel lines got cut on my Orchie truck during the game on Sunday.
However, the flying winger hasn't ruled out a quick return to Newcastle.
The clause with Wally in it allows me to get out if he does go, but I don't really know what's happening at the moment with Wally. It's pretty disappointing. They're all on his back.
Tough forward David Boyd, also off to England, says he doesn't plan to come home and play again, so he expects a day full of emotion on Sunday against Illawarra.
I probably would be lying if I said it would be easy to hold back its ear, but obviously there comes a day for everybody to give it away, and it's not always easy. It's been 6 years, and something that I can't just turn me back on.
All three agree, though, they want to finish 1993 with a win.
There were some impressive performances early at the Manning Valley Sports Complex go-kart track. However, as the day progressed, things started to get messy. The light shower turned into pouring rain, and the drivers had trouble keeping their machines on track. By midday, the surface had become so slippery that organisers called the time trial off. In a first for the motorsporting world, drivers received their grid positions out of a hat. In the light clubman division, Mark Blanche from Wingham was the first to have his name pulled out and will start in pole position tomorrow. In the heavy clubman division, Danny Berry of Taree was another lucky winner of pole position. The winding 700-metre dirt track is one of the best in Australia and will test the competitors as they travel at speeds of up to 100 kilometres an hour. Organisers say that the state titles will go ahead tomorrow regardless of weather conditions.
Of their more than 20 games at the Glass House, the Falcons had only won one. That is until today. The Giants and the Falcons both badly needed victory to remain in playoff contention. The Falcons were down at quarter time, the Giants ahead 33-22, but fortunes were changing by half time, Newcastle overtaking the home side. The match wore on with some desperation play, but the Giants just couldn't turn the table on the Falcons, determined not to come home empty-handed from their road trip. Terry Dozier top scored for Newcastle with 24, Michael Johnson shot 20, and Everett Stevens 17. Final score 94-79, and a winning smile from Dozier.
It has to be one of the more unusual sports, a Jaffa Stuffathon. At Charlestown Square, Bray Deneen, champion surfer Mark Richards and night prop Mark Sargent were in lolly heaven. The idea is to stuff as many of the 150 kilos of Jaffas down your trousers in a 2-minute rush, all for a good cause, raising awareness for Red Nose Day tomorrow. Ray was doing a perfect impersonation of the Michelin Man, but it was basketballer Grant Kruger who took the trophy at the weigh-in, picking up 25 kilos of the chocolate treats.
Are you one of those people that likes Jaffas?
I don't mind Jaffas, but I don't know about now. I think that might have put me off them a bit.
Ray came in a strong second with 22 kilos.
Usually in the old days, it was a case of rolling them down the aisle of the pictures, but this is the first time I have to stuff them down my pants, and it's a completely different experience, I'll tell you.
Can you believe it? Last year, keen supporters actually ate some of the Jaffas after the competition. This year, they were cleaned up and disposed of at the tip. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Fronting tonight's major semi are Maroochydore High from the Queensland Sunshine Coast and Henry Kendall High from Gosford. The Queenslanders couldn't wait to stretch out this morning after a gruelling 13-hour bus trip. Maroochydore were pretty confident coming into tonight's game until star fullback Matthew Lowe broke his leg. Henry Kendall are the closest thing to a local side and are bursting with talent. Goalkeeper Andrew Wills will be a hard man to pass. Wills shows little respect for his body in defending his goal. While midfielders Simon Gill and Shane Knight provide plenty of pace up the middle. Tonight's other semi is between Parramatta Marist High and Dermalion College from Canberra. The winners will go through to tomorrow night's finals at Spears Point Park.
Maroochydore in yellow controlled the play from the opening minutes to dominate the first half of what was an exciting game. The Queenslanders had Henry Kendall High down 2-0 at half-time, but not to be outdone, the Gosford boys staged a brilliant comeback in the second stanza. Drew Jager scored the first goal just 4.5 minutes into the second half. And Drew was on a roll, notching up a second less than 5 minutes later, this time with the help of the post. At 2-2, the 8-hour trip for the Maroochydore team started to tell. Tiredness set in and they were having trouble retaining possession. The winning chance for Kendall came after a free kick from about 25 metres out, scooped in by Brent Demery, extending the score to 3-2. But it was only a short victory celebration for Henry Kendall High, which faces its toughest opposition tonight, taking on Parramatta Marist Brothers at 7:30.
What else would a basketball junkie do on his birthday but play ball? He may be the grand old man of the league at 40, but he hasn't lost his competitive edge. At training, he regularly challenges captain Terry Dozier to a shootout and loves the thrill of winning. But the years are showing he admits to not being as fresh after a game as what he used to be.
I know when I get up sometime out of bed, I'll be feeling myself and say what's going to hurt next. But overall, it feels really good. Only niggling injuries, nothing really major.
And although he regularly shoots at least 10 points a game and inspires confidence in the side, Al isn't too sure how much longer he'll be able to keep it up.
I promise you, you won't be talking to me in 10 years' time. Not as a player. More or less, I'm going to take 1 year at a time right now. I'm just going to work on this year, try to make sure the Falcons get to the playoffs with my teammates and everything, and then after that, just see what happens for next year.
Like every team, there's always a few hellraisers, and you can expect the boys have a special something planned for Al after tonight's game against Hobart.
I know we're going to have something planned for him because the big 4-0, you got to have something for the guy. So he'll have a lot to tell you when he comes back.
And by the look of that grin, there's a good chance he knows what to expect.
It started 3 months ago as a weekend trip away for a group of veteran touch footballers from Brisbane. From these beginnings spawned the return of the Legends Clash held at Jack Neal Ground today. Of the 14 players participating in the showdown, they have played 190 test matches between them. The Legends included Great Britain greats Tommy Bishop, Cliff Watson and Dave Bolton. The Australian Price, Kel O'Shea and Eddie Lumsden. Although not as young and as fast as they were in their heyday, the Legends still managed to find some sparkle in their feet. It is hoped that the match will become an annual event.
In schoolboy country rugby union, the Y-Bird Shield is the competition to win. More than 100 schools take part. It's for students in year 10 and under. In today's semi-final, Lambton on the right of the screen were too strong for Canamble. Centre and junior knight Francis Purcell made too many busts. The Newcastle boys kept attacking, hooker Shane Watton finishing off a good move. Lambton took out the match 29-9. They now move on to the final against Nowra next week.
"17-year-old Scott McGregor has been knocking on the door for some time. After impressive performances at the All-Schools Carnival last week and being named in the Australian, his selection only became a formality. His partner in height this time will be Tim Smith. Tim is a genuine gentle giant, but he has a pretty mean spring in his repertoire. Both boys hope the selection will lead to a contract with a professional team.
Basketball, I hope, has a big part of my future, so it's a stepping stone.
The pair are also in Year 12 and studying for the HSC, and although they've been picked to train at the AIS, they could be excluded from the run-on side because of school commitments, a fact that doesn't sit easy with Scott.
I train more than do schoolwork, so much prefer basketball.
And 4 local under-16 boys have been selected to play for country in the annual game against Sydney this Saturday. The girls' team will also include 2 from Newcastle.
The setter has been instigated by the carry-on. Part of the Central Coast Wanderers will wear the club's traditional maroon and white. The Wanderers' home and ground will be Graham parking cost it a $3.5 million redevelopment will bring up to standard. It's already talked about Aldi Marky Rover, now living in the area, and rugby legend Mark Phillips will play significant roles in the club's development. Quality means all Bob, Templeton is also our possibility is coach. And the club is confident they will have plenty of talent to work with. But there's lots of players playing in Sydney, on the country, here with Russell, Virginia, Virginia, and playing in Sydney. And that's what concerns Newcastle rugby officials. They believe the cream of local talent will be drawn away. Australia are going to really prove themselves in front of the New South Wales and Australian selectors. They would have to think very, very seriously that they're going to Australia like this in Gold Coast. And that really hurts. Newcastle say they have as well, but didn't get to the first stage of talks. Newcastle, as far as I can understand, were not really considered for the competition. But this is set as far as I take 10 years. No, Newcastle's best are already playing first grade in Sydney, and the lure of travel only an hour to training instead of 2, probably. We see the Wanderers a few quick signatures to begin their development and team next year. And Until next week against Wanderers. The Knights had a stumbling block in the first few minutes when Captain Max Chapman left the field with an knee injury. North took advantage, gave their opponents weak, and the same raced away to a 10-0 lead at half-time. Newcastle then became their own worst enemy. Over the score at 22-6, North away, the Knights began a thumping comeback. Again, Camp was shrinking quick, they got the clock running out just too soon. And Newcastle will now play Canterbury in the preliminary final next week.
The home side led the way into the first quarter, but the Falcons were still pretty evenly matched and only trailed a few points by the half. South East Melbourne Magic had the top of the NBL ladder in their grasp and weren't going to be shaken by the visitors, who were lulled into a third quarter slump. The Magic took the opportunity to crowd on the points, widening a gap that the Falcons weren't going to pull back as the game and fatigue wore on. The match had its share of controversy. Newcastle's Grant Kruger scored it off after a desperate technical foul under the basket. Final score, Melbourne 114 to Newcastle's 92, and the Magic to the top of the ladder in front of the Perth Wildcats. Newcastle home next weekend, ranked number 7 for the playoffs. It was a bruising bout at Charlestown's Lyle Peacock Oval for the Under-18s Division 1 Grand Final. Lakes had already stamped their seal on the Under-16s First Division with a convincing win of 28 over Maitland 4. Lakes led the match with halfback Brett Tamorley and centre Sean Harrison in for tries, but it was only a late lockout that kept West from a catch-up in the dying moments of the game. Blackmore and Skinner for Lakes took the legs out from under Cliff Anderson, headed for certain Rosella points. At the end of the day, it was 14-6 to Lakes for their second grand final win in 2 years. The club's overall domination of the season, especially in the under-18s and 16s, augurs well for next year's comp. Most expected the Singleton Bulls to be on a rampage, but Wanderers were out to shut the gate from moments into the first half at Townsend Oval. David Earp was in for the first of 2 tries, which enraged the Bulls and led them on a deep push into Wanderers territory. But the Blues broke out and Earp again scored in the corner. The final scoreboard showed Wanderers 20, Singleton 10, and will lead to a Singleton against Newcastle Uni playoff. The winner of that match meeting Wanderers at Newcastle No. 2 Oval for the grand final.
The success of the Falcons this year has so far guaranteed crowds of at least 3,000 a game. However, they hope their supporters will come out of the woodwork over the next few weeks to give them a winning edge.
Anytime your crowd gets behind you, it tends to be off-putting to the opposition. They're away from home and a little bit of a hostile crowd, and it can put them out of their offence a little bit. So, we are looking for a big crowd to get behind us. And
Centre Paul Kuiper will be out again this week due to a groin injury, and for a moment it looked as if replacement Simon O'Donnell could be off the court as well after dislocating his finger at training. However, this afternoon he was given the all-clear to play.
I had a little bit of a clash with Grant Kruger, and people who usually clash with Grant come off second best, so I came off second best and dislocated my finger.
The Falcons have had a pretty rough trot with referees recently, but there is a chance they may avoid some of the hardliners if they make the playoffs.
Gary Fox has done a great job all year of rostering the referees, and he has talked to coaches and talked to teams and gotten a lot of feedback from the coaches, and he continues to do that, so we are able to voice our opinions.
Western Suburbs burst onto the field determined to give their supporters something to cheer about at the end of the day. Minutes into the game and Warners Bay wanted to even up a few scores from earlier in the year. The intimidation paid off, the Bulldogs grabbing the first goal from a Russell Macy snapshot. Devils veteran Clinton Maxwell didn't wait long to remind them that it wouldn't be all one-way traffic, but that's just what it became in the last quarter. Warners Bay 1993 premiers by a very good margin. Just a few hundred metres away and Brewers in the blue were getting a lesson in youthful enthusiasm from Novos. Young West side throwing themselves at everything and forcing Brewers into uncharacteristic mistakes. By the third quarter, the pressure was showing, but at the break, a few choice words from coach Lucy Wilcox put them back on track. Novo's Bruce Linke told his players to concentrate on grabbing turnovers. So when the final quarter started, every missed shot became a fierce battle for possession. The two teams went goal for goal. However, the umpires' calls went Brewers' way, and they managed to finish with a 3-point buffer. However, nobody left the court disgraced. Neither side gave any ground in the first half. The ball carrier wrapped up very quickly. Singleton's Scott Dalibozek made the first clean break after a beautiful cutout pass and stormed over for a try. Uni's Mark James engineered some brilliant moves in the lineouts that earned his team some easy meters. After the break, the minor premiers looked as if they were going to dominate, cutting Uni up out wide. The lineouts became fierce battles and had the crowd on their feet for most of the half. All the scrum drills throughout the week paid off for Uni, enabling them to gain some good field position and eventually the winning points. Uni will now go on to meet Wanderers next week. Mark Sargent has always been one to lead by example. After a disappointing run of injuries that sidelined him for most of the year, Sargent came back in devastating form. Minutes before yesterday's game against Illawarra, coach David Waite broke the news to Sarge and the rest of the team that the big prop had a new job.
I suppose a few people expected me to be ecstatic about being appointed a position, but as you say, it's just it's a job, it's a challenge in front of me rather than a notch on the belt to me.
Well liked amongst his peers, the appointment has met with total support from the players.
Well, they've been very supportive, and I wouldn't expect anything else from our blokes. Like, they've always been very supportive of Mick, and they were very supportive of Sammy Stewart. So, I don't think that stand is going to change.
Sargent won't have long until he slips into the new role. The season finished yesterday, but pre-season training starts in just 10 weeks. An hour after the game and the Curry team were back in front of that familiar chant. The 4,000-strong crowd at the Workers' Club then burst into chorus after chorus of "We Are the Champions." The team song released when they won their last premiership in 1945 was given a good workout, and there was even talk that it will be re-released. All the team had the chance to drink from the Grand Final cup. Curry secretary Ian McDonald couldn't finish his drink, so he had a remedy for the leftovers. When it came around to his second sip, again he couldn't empty the chalice. The Bulldogs' victory appeared to be the tonic needed to unify a struggling community.
It's now 1 o'clock in the morning and the cheering's been going non-stop and the singing hasn't stopped either. It's 1 looks like it's going to go all.
Over at West, the night was passed very quietly. By this morning, the players were over their disappointment and enjoying the mateship. The tackle by Scott Bradley in the dying minutes that gave Curry a match-winning kick in front, going over and over in their minds. The grand final was a real edge-of-the-seat thriller, despite the odds Curry led at half-time, only to have the scores continually matched and tied during the second half. 1993's grand final is already being tagged as one of the best seen locally for 50 years. A full replay will be shown on NBN at 10:45 on Wednesday night. Darren Curtis, NBN News. Falcons coach Tom Wisman was more than happy to let the coaches sit in on a session to pick up a few tricks of the trade. Each of these coaches controls their state's best junior basketballers, and they readily admit watching the pros go around can add an extra dimension to the children's game.
I'm always looking to learn, and it's easy to learn from the top level, so we'll certainly be looking to add to the New South Wales repertoire for Friday's game against Victoria.
And they couldn't have picked a better day to sit in on. The Falcons were in an aggressive frame of mind, preparing themselves for the game against South East Melbourne and walloping the lowly placed Hobart side on Friday night. Simon O'Donnell's confidence level is soaring after a strong game against Gold Coast, and he's making a strong charge to be included in the starting lineup.
Breakers officials and Darren Stewart's manager Brian Butler finalised details of a 2-year contract today. Stewart is playing in the Malaysian League, but the 28-year-old Socceroo will be back to lead the Breakers next season. At least 3 other clubs were chasing Stewart, and with skills like this, it's not hard to see why. Breakers coach Jim Foley has about 15 players who have agreed to terms, including Kiwi goalkeeper Clint Gosling. The Breakers are now keen to sign 2 Adamstown players. Gosford's Henry Kendall High and the yellow and grey tops dominated the first half, Shane Wright putting them on the board in the 14th minute. But it was a little early for the victory laps. With the game deadlocked for the rest of the half, some frustrated play resulted in 4 warnings. Maris Brothers took control early in the second half, Michael Galuzzo scoring the equaliser. However, it was a hat-trick by the Sydney side's Michael Balut that sealed victory. His first goal came from just outside the circle. His next from 40 metres out. Parramatta maintained the pressure, Balut finding the back of the net once again. Then in the final minute, with a little help from Lady Luck, goal number 5 for the Brothers.
Just hours before they boarded the plane, the Falcons were still on the court, cramming in some practice. Hobart, at bottom of the ladder, but still pose a threat to Newcastle. They would love nothing better than to beat the Falcons and cost them a spot in the playoffs.
They're going to be playing loose because they have nothing to play for, where we have a lot to lose. So teams tend to get a little uptight and a little tentative when they play, when they have something to lose. So we got to go out there and play as loose as they do.
A win for the Falcons will lock them into 5th place. This week's preparation has been very physical, the players not afraid to use their bodies.
The old adage, you play like you train, and the players understand that. This group of players understand that, and so we go hard at it, and you know, we play tough ball games.
And they can expect a bump or 2 against South East Melbourne on Sunday. Magic are in 2nd place, and the Falcons will need all the defensive skills they showed against the Gold Coast to shut them down.
Ned Hanlon from New Lambton was watching West vs Curry in the local league grand final yesterday afternoon. As the game reached its climax, Ned had a heart attack. He survived because 2 spectators in the crowd performed the life-giving procedure CPR.
I think I was terribly lucky there was someone there that knew what they were doing.
Ambulance paramedics today praised the efforts of the 2 people who kept Mr. Hanlon alive until they arrived with their heart starter equipment.
That was enabling them to supply his brain and his heart and his lungs with a good supply of blood and oxygen, keeping him going just until the ambulance arrived there so we could deliver the electric shock to his heart to restart his heart.
Ned Hanlon was recovering in the John Hunter Hospital today. He is well enough to watch the replay, but is not sure if he wants to.
Not much at all because of me team got beat.
Even though history will record Curry as the victors, Ned Hanlon believes he was the real winner at the local league grand final this year. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
David Woods played with the Newcastle Knights in 1991. He was dropped at the end of that year.
The court heard that he had met with Knights officials in May '91 to arrange a contract for the following season. In a previous hearing, Wood said he thought he was signed, sealed and delivered, but admitted he hadn't actually put his signature to paper. Former Knights Chief Executive Mike Armstrong confirmed he had offered Woods a contract, but said it had to be ratified by the board. Today, Magistrate Richard Wakely said there was some to be paid for the next season. In his up, the magistrate said he couldn't be satisfied the parties had come to a conclusion of their terms. Magistrate Wakely ordered Woods, who was on a plane to play league in England, to pay $3,295 in costs to the Knights. He had been suing for $37,000 in loss of contract. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Gosford's Henry Kendall High and the yellow striped tops dominated the first half, Shane Wright putting them on the board in the 14th minute. With the game deadlocked for the rest of the half, some frustrated play resulted in 4 warnings. Morris Brothers took control early in the second half, Michael Galuzzo scoring the equaliser. But it was a hat-trick by the Sydney side's Michael Balut that sealed victory, one of his goals from 40 metres out. 3-1 up, the brothers maintained the pressure. With a little help from Lady Luck, they scored again in the final minute.
The two sides had barely hit the turf when Steve Crowe was flat on his back. Crowe was hit with a swinging arm. The league today refused to take any action, and the Knights don't want the hassle of taking players to Sydney to cite the North forward. 2 tackles later and Captain Max Chapman was destined for an early shower. He sustained serious knee cartilage damage, but despite the pain will play again next week. The loss of 2 important players shot holes in their game plan and left the side rattled. Norths often found the Knights bunched up and made full use of the gaps. The second half was an enormous turnaround. Tony Kemp's passes finally found their mark and the Knights were rapidly closing a 20-point gap. The young Bears knew the clock would be their only saviour, but Steve Crowe didn't want to see any time wasted. They finished at 4 tries apiece, a penalty goal the only difference. Coach Robert Finch was pleased with his team's recovery powers, but stresses it will be a vastly improved first half next weekend against Canterbury.
It's a matter of honour when services sides meet on the paddock. An infringement card is something like a medal if the deed kept the other side from scoring. Points mean pride and they're not come by easily.
This game's Army against Air Force, annual grudge match, I suppose you'd say.
The national tournament is being hosted by the Australian Combined Services Soccer Association at RAF Williamtown and sees the best boots in the Army, Navy and Air Force congregate for the week-long tournament. A Kiwi contingent has flown in as well. The New Zealanders made their mark with a 5-0 win against Navy, and in the women's division, Navy 3 defeated the RAF 1. The Army men's side claimed a bruising 5-0 win over the RAF this afternoon.
It's on Sunday at 11 o'clock, there's a game where the Australian Defence Force team selected from this competition will play the New Zealand Combined Services team, and that's open to the public.
With the last 2 premierships under their belt and having won 2 of this season's 3 clashes with Muswellbrook, Aberdeen in the orange, black and white started as firm favourites, and it wasn't long before the Aberdeen Tigers had some points on the board through an opportunist try by prop Paul Smith. A successful conversion had the Tigers leading 6-0 when blood was spilled. Muswellbrook's playing coach Chris Cummings and fellow forward Anthony Matthews had to leave the park after clashing heads in a tackle. Shortly after, a brawl broke out. Aberdeen's Tim Smith and Jason Phelps were sin-binned, giving Muswellbrook's David Edwards the space he needed to go in. Aberdeen was 6-4 up when Muswellbrook began turning the tables, a penalty kick and a try putting them 12-6 ahead at the half-time bell. That lead was short-lived. Aberdeen began pegging them back in the second half. In the 68th minute, Mark Feeney successfully converting a try, giving his team victory by 14 points to 12. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Novocastrians are going bananas over their club making a Winfield Cup Grand Final.
Oh, mate, that's not just a reserve grade. That is the main game on Sunday. And, of course, the reserve grade are representing our town. And, mate, it's going to be huge. That's going to be a great impact. They'll be on national television representing our town. And, mate, when we win, wow!
Blue and red colours have sprouted throughout the city. If the gutsy reserve grade side wins against North Sydney on Sunday, it will be the first time a Newcastle League side has won a Winfield Cup Grand Final, and their home supporters don't care what grade they are playing.
It is still one of our teams, and they are there in a grand final. And as I said earlier, of course, it is the first time we've been in a grand final. I think it's a good news story. I think it's something everyone should be supporting.
The Knights were minor premiers in the tough reserve grade competition. After losing 24-22 against North Sydney in the major semi, they came back against Canterbury last weekend with a convincing 33-20 win. Footytab believes the reserve grade grand final will be a close one, giving punters a half a point start to North Sydney. Fruit shop owner Frank Frasca believes the Knights will win and has taught his staff the same winning formula. Win, lose or draw, the Knights and their supporters will return to the licensed club at Marathon Stadium on Sunday night to celebrate. Jason Neuenhoff, NBN News. 21-year-old Alwyn Duke is the favourite for the fight to be held at Twin Towns Services Club at Tweed Heads on October the 6th, but his opponent, ex-Olympian Justin Rousseau, will be no pushover. Alwyn has been training up to 4 hours a day for the past 5 weeks and believes the effort will pay off.
I've no doubt in my mind I will win come Wednesday night.
George Ptolemy has trained Alwyn since he was 12 years old. He has watched his charge win the Australian light welterweight title in the amateur ranks before turning pro. Professionally, Alwyn has an impressive 8-win, 1-draw and 1-loss record. His last victim was Aman Ramos, rated number 5 on the WBF circuit. He defeated Ramos last month. George is also confident the youngster will win the right to challenge for the Australian lightweight title.
There's no doubt about that, but I can't see Justin beating Alwyn.
Current Australian lightweight champ Scott Brown of Melbourne will have to defend his title against the winner of the Duke Rousseau bout. Jason Neuenhoff, NBN News.
Like a typical gripe from a team that comes away with a loss, but the Falcons' complaint does have merit. Grant Kruger again singled out for the foul when his opponent was just as at fault. No sooner had Kruger got on with the job and he was pinned again.
In all fairness to Grant, he's been a little bit hard done by so far in this game.
The next time Kruger was called for a foul, it should have been on Al Green and happened after the ref blew his whistle. And while Kruger was battling to stay on court, Terry Dozier was having dunks thwarted by the hand of Bruce Bolden. Bolden put his fist through the ring, stopping the jam and turning the illegal block into points. A lack of action and a refusal to make what he thought were obvious calls prompted the captain to almost lose his cool. The coach couldn't contain himself and it cost 4 shots.
I think everybody is fearing us now, the teams, the coaches, and the players, but I'm not sure that we've earned the respect of everyone in the league.
Late in the last quarter, Tony Ronaldson slipped Kruger a sly one and gave away only a personal foul. When Kruger returned the blow, it was ruled as intentional and cost him the rest of the game. It was a pretty physical weekend for the Falcons. On Friday night, Jim Havrillo didn't like the fact that Peter Harvey was running rings around him. That headbutt is being investigated by the league, and the Falcons will ask for yesterday's referee's performance to be reviewed, but won't lodge an official complaint. NBN News. The players' body language sent a clear signal that it's the business time of the year and any friendships were temporarily forgotten. The team's level pegged through the entire game, Everett Stevens pulling out the goodies when needed. The lead seesawed, ensuring the crowd were on their feet for nearly the entire last quarter. The Falcons were now in front by a point, and with 12 seconds left, Tom Wisman warned his players how quickly that tide could turn. And spurred on by an emotional crowd, the team seemed to listen. The joy of a playoffs berth enough to bring a man to tears. Terry Dozier had left the court earlier with a serious back injury, but the win eased the pain just a little. Today he underwent 2 intensive physio sessions. A decision on when he can play a game will be made later in the week.
After months of competition, Lambton in the bright blue and Nowra had fought their way to the final of the Waibird Shield, the two best country teams in the state for Year 10 rugby union. Lambton came out throwing the ball around, but the boys from the south coast returned the fire with a forward surge. Hooker Mabry in the corner. The two Nowra props play for the state country schoolboys side and they made their mark, but Lambton fought back after a trick move from a tap. 5'8" and sometimes junior knight Guy Wills levelled the score. But the pressure of the big game got to the Lambton boys. Nowra played more tight football, picked up the run of play and went on to take the Shield 12 points to 5. A light workout for the Knights reserves tonight before a video session. Noticeably absent from the field, skipper Max Chapman. He has had knee problems but says he'll be right on the day.
I've got the go-ahead to go through, so I'm very confident getting through the game.
Crow and Madison will also be on the paddock after injury scares last week against Norths. The Knights must now play life or death football. In their last meeting with Canterbury, it was an 18-all nail-biter. Coach Finch says Sunday will be tough.
They've got a lot of experienced players. Obviously their forward pack is very strong, and it'll be a fair task for us on Sunday.
Things just didn't click for the Falcons last night. Passes and shots that would normally be a matter of course were foiled. Illawarra were by no means scintillating in their play, but the Falcons made them look good. Paul Kuiper, returning from injury, was the Falcons' top scorer until fouled out in the last few minutes. But by then the damage was done. And no matter how much they argued the point, the Falcons didn't have the spark of the past few weeks.
11 teams from as far afield as Canberra, Moree and Lismore converged on Kempsey today for the second year of the Warriors competition. But it seems a Sydney team may take out the event. The Redfern All Blacks have returned to Kempsey keen to defend the title they won last year. $3,000 in prize money is up for grabs, and for those that get knocked out early, there's a wooden spooners prize of $500. Finals are scheduled for tomorrow.
The psych-up has already begun. This afternoon, Grant Kruger went through his now familiar home game ritual. The haircut now part of the trademark that makes him one of the most feared and talked about players in the league. The extra attention, though, also appears to be a drawback when it comes to some referees.
They've been a bit better this year, I think. They've still been getting a few bad calls, but they've been letting a lot more get away in the game, so I've been fairly happy with how they've been going.
Besides going into the playoffs on a high, there's another incentive for the Falcons to win tomorrow night. It will be Peter Harvey's 100th game for the club.
Basically, I just want to play a good game. My form's been down the last couple of weeks, but I'm going to go out there and concentrate a lot on the defence, and that way it should bring me in an offensive game.
Captain Terry Dozier confirmed he will be playing and wants to give daughter Casey something to remember before they head back to the States for the off-season. Extra seating has been added to the entertainment centre for the expected crowd, but there are less than 500 seat tickets left, so a few hundred standing room only places will be offered at the door. The first competition game for the year is only 3 weeks away and the Breakers are still working hard on fitness. As part of their new style, Coach Jim Foley is taking his team to the soccer public. Today the workout moved to Madawi as part of the Junior Soccer Presentation Day, and there were plenty of starry-eyed youngsters watching every move.
I don't think it does them any harm to have someone to identify to and aspire to being perhaps good enough one day.
The Breakers' first pre-season game will be next Wednesday night against Central Coast. It's the one chance of the year for the young up-and-comers to impress the night selection panel. Up for grabs is 30 places in the Harold Matthews, SG Ball and Jersey Flegg summer training sides. With so much at stake, the temptation is there for players to hog the ball, but it was anything but one-up football.
We emphasise to the players, we speak to the players before they go out,
that it's important to share the workload, and it's not always the person who has the football in their hands the most and who comes up with the biggest tackles who may impress.
Besides the local hopefuls, players from Dubbo, Byron Bay and Cooma also tried out. One player sure to be on the shortlist, though, is 17-year-old Nathaniel Blackwell from Inverell. Besides a handy turn of speed, he grabbed a swag of tries in just 2 games.
Pressure on the ball all time, so let's move the ball.
This afternoon, for the first time since he was injured, Terry Dozier trained with the team for a full session. Determined to make it back into the starting lineup, Dozier didn't hold back. But Dozier says while he's been given the all clear, his lower back still feels tight.
Well, it is going to take a little while to get loose, but also I'm just trying to do only what I'm capable of doing and not do anything that may hurt the back, so I'm just taking it easy.
Man Mountain Paul Kuiper was also putting in the hard work this afternoon. In his first game back after injury, Kuiper was the side's standout player, something he wants to continue.
I came out and I was ready to play. I've done a lot of work on my leg and I've done a lot of running in the water, so I felt kind of fit.
After last weekend's lacklustre performance, Coach Tom Wisman made sure all the players were paying for it in sweat. He wants to impress upon the team that this week's game against Giants is the last chance to get back into rhythm before the playoffs.
If we get a win now going into the playoffs, get the fifth spot, get the favorable draw that gives you in the playoffs, we want to make something happen here in the playoffs, so it's an important first step for us now.
Extra seating is being organised for Saturday night's game. With 4 days to go, it's already a near sellout.
In the 16-year-old girls singles, Kate Wyatt in the green shirt made her trip from South Australia worthwhile, proving too strong for top seed Kim Penny from Toukley. Kate defeated Kim 6-2, 6-4. In the 14-year singles, it was an all-Gosford final. Christy Gearside in the white skirt and Christy Herring went stroke for stroke in the first set. Gearside clinched the first in a tiebreaker and wrapped up the second set 6-1. In the 17 years boys final, the tempo stepped up, the players going blow for blow. Left-handed Kyron Pinter from Newcastle was up against top seed Novak Nash from Taree. Novak, ranked in the top 300 in the world, was too strong. Nash won the match in straight sets. On the next court, the competition was just as fierce in the boys' 12 years final. Daniel Farrow from Sydney in the black pants was up 5-1 in the first set tiebreaker and looked to have things wrapped up. However, Toukley's Luke McDonald, just back after 8 months off with glandular fever, had other ideas. He battled on to win 7-6, 6-1. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
University may have made it the hard way to the grand final, but there's plenty of money around to put them in as favourites. Last week against Singleton, the students put in an awesome second half. After trailing 10-6 at the surge forward to lay the groundwork for a brilliant 32-10 win. But it's a margin that could have been much bigger. Goal-kicking winger Damien Brown must have forgotten his comfortable boots because he missed 18 points. It's hoped that he'll rectify that by this weekend. Wanderers have a backline, though, that's near impossible to stop once it gets moving. Wanderers will also have a psychological advantage because they defeated Uni 14-11 last time they met. The two haven't come up against each other in a grand final since 1966, and that time Uni won. We won't know until 20 to 5 tomorrow afternoon if history repeats itself. Darren Curtis, NBN News. Only a minute and a half in and the Knights' intentions were made perfectly clear. Damien Driscoll repeated the performance a few minutes later and the Knights were on a roll. Canterbury were looking shattered and Tony Kemp rubbed it in with the first of his 3 tries. They went to the break with the Knights leading 19-4 on the scoreboard and well ahead in the punch-up. Canterbury returned with a new lease of life and managed to get within 7 points of Newcastle and looked very threatening. The Knights were throwing everything into protecting their line, but Ewan McGrady still managed to slip through. But showing experience beyond their years, the young Knights didn't panic, they merely stepped up a gear. Newcastle will now play Norths in next Sunday's grand final to be shown live on NBN. Highfields were the hot favourites going into today's game, and they only took 3 minutes to show why. The enthusiastic crowd was treated to a brilliant display of attack and defence. Highfield's goalkeeper John Russell was forced to earn his money, but appeared to revel in the pressure. Missouri made every opportunity count, and in the 61st minute pushed further ahead. Lake Macquarie became frustrated and had 2 players sent from the field in the second half, and with their numbers down, City just couldn't stem the flow.
The reserve grade team gathered at Marathon Stadium 2 hours ago. You a bit nervous?
Nah, not yet. Tomorrow morning when I wake up and have breakfast, I'll start feeling the nerves.
There was time for last-minute autographs, a quick photo, and of course, good wishes from the crowd.
It's good, just shows the support we got into town. It's a one-team town, and it's good to see everyone show up. And I'll say there'll be a bit more down there tomorrow.
Then it was time to stow their bags and pile on the bus. What do you think your chances are?
Oh, we're going down there to win it, and, anything less, it's a big disappointment.
But the fans don't think they'll be disappointed.
They'll bring it home. They'll bring it home. They'll bring it home, that's for sure, love.
The team left for Sydney under police escort, with all of Newcastle's hopes riding along with them.
Yesterday's performance by reserve grade was lifted straight from the Knights handbook. A try in the opening 2 minutes and just about every pass well timed and finding its mark.
This week we needed to start well, which we did. We scored early, and that really did set the foundation for the especially that first half onslaught.
Within 20 minutes, the Knights were up 19-0. Despite a second half lapse that allowed Canterbury back into the game briefly, the young Knights were dynamic. Tony Herman and Tony Kemp responsible for much of the damage. Coach Finch will be relying on the pair to keep the younger members on a steady keel during grand final build-up.
Well, they can get carried away with the hype that's surrounding them, and their mind wanders off what they're there for, and that's to play football.
Reserve grade will train every night this week at 5:30 at Marathon Stadium and are happy for fans to sit in on the sessions. Captain Max Chapman says he doesn't mind people coming along, but warns onlookers not to expect anything fancy.
We'll just keep it as we've been doing all year. It's been fine all year. It's just another game, really. Maybe a few things might change, but I'd say the basic formula as we used last time will work.
If you don't have your tickets all ready for the big game next week, you've got about Buckley's of getting them through official channels. The stadium sold out. Your only option left is to pay an exorbitant price through a scalper or to pick one up through a newspaper advertisement. Darren Curtis, NBN News.
The Palms stormed home in all 3 grades in the premiership round of the knockout competition. Camden Haven and Pacific Palms travelled to Taree for the grand final. The Palms have featured in the end-of-year playoffs over the past 10 years. The older, more experienced side had the edge on Camden Haven, considered young guns in the competition. Steve Kell opened the scoring for the Palms. Glenn Vincent equalised before half-time. The second half turned into a test of endurance, with the Palms' fitness regime paying off. Steve Johnson started the landslide with the first of his 3 goals. Daniel Percy for Camden Haven headed in a consolation goal from a nicely crossed airball. Final score, Palms 4, Camden Haven 1. In other grades, Pacific Palms 2 beat Old Bar 1, and the Palms again 1-0 over Lansdowne.
Like last week, the Knights put their mark on the game in the first 2 minutes. Prompting grand final parties all across the Hunter to erupt. But the try didn't go to everyone's head. When Andrew Johns missed the conversion, they knew they weren't in the clear yet. The next 20 minutes, though, the young Knights ran all over the Bears, almost treating their defence with contempt. Norths grabbed a try after a Darren Tracy fumble, and the scores were all locked up. Peter Jackson showed all his years of experience bagging a field goal just before half-time. and it was enough to take a Newcastle fan's breath away. The Knights came back in the second half, picking up where they'd left off. And as if it wasn't hot enough out there already, Steve Crow turned up the heat. A few minutes later, a North's reception committee cooled him off. Tony Kemp tried to lift the lid off the pressure cooker, but didn't even shake it loose. Captain Max Chapman tried again, but he too was just off the mark. Suddenly, those experienced legs of Peter Jackson buckled, denying Newcastle any chance to move the ball back near their try line and any chance of winning their first senior title. And the faces back at home said it all. An emotional Max Chapman acknowledged that his side couldn't have even gone this far on their own. Spearheading the Falcons' attack will be Al Green. They used to call him mean, but with his retirement imminent and scoring 15 points last week, he's now being called Evergreen. And although he's playing some of the best ball of his career, he says there's no second thoughts about retiring.
No, I'm happy with my decision, and it's a decision that I took a lot of time to think about, and I don't want to do like a couple of people I know that made the decision and kept changing their mind. I made it, and it's going to stay that way.
Al believes playoff hype can't be matched.
Yes, because you know it's really no tomorrow. Every game is a vital game where you know if you play the first game of the season, you still got 25 more games to go. With this one, if you mess up that first game, you only got one more to go.
And after being belted around and knocked to the floor repeatedly against North Melbourne, Captain Terry Dozier was a little bit stiff today, but confident his injured back won't cause him any dramas on Wednesday night. Ticket sales for Wednesday's game have gone through the roof. A record 700 were bought up today, leaving just 1,000 left. Coach Tom Wisman is pleased with the prospect of a big crowd, knowing that it could psych Brisbane out and give his team winning confidence.
We're pleased and proud that we were the city a winner, because they deserve winners. We've got some great fans here, and we don't want to disappoint them in the playoffs.
Yeah, and of course, what more local sports news, flashbacks from 94. Don't forget that's it for now. From all of us here. Good night.